This is dedicated to the homies that was down since day one. Welcome to Drop D.
Quick Hits, a JFK assassination news and notes podcast with your hosts, Rob Clark and Doug Campbell.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Quick Hits, a JFK assassination news and notes podcast. I'm 50% of your host, Rob Clark of the Lone Gunman Podcast, and with us today is my lovely co-host, Mr. Doug Campbell.
Hey, my man, what is shaking? What's going on? How are you?
I'm freezing my nuts off. It's pretty cold here.
Yeah, it got down to 20.
The tropical paradise.
Oh man, you're at like your Martha's Vineyard estate now. You're still by the beach. You're just north, right?
Yes.
Where it gets down to like 40 degrees and shit.
There's a little frost on the waves.
Frost on the pumpkin. Frost on the pumpkin. Yes, absolutely. It is fantastic to be sitting down with you again, my good man, for a more informed, in-depth historical study. Let's get started, homie. We need to, wait a minute. I'm on the wrong page. We need to, introduce our guest. We have a guest. Dude, introduce, you know what? The most frequent guest in the history of this show. You know it? Introduce our fine yes. Conversationalist. Wrong.
Yes, from the annals of Dealey Plaza, UK. The human pack horse himself, the toter of all things documentation, and friend to all of us here, Mr. Bart Camp. Welcome to the show again, my friend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. That's a nice introduction.
Give him a hand. Give him a hand.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Got a fair bit to discuss and to talk about. We've done some, I mentioned part of this already on the previous show, and I look forward to talk about it a little bit more later on. So, yeah.
Bart's favorite podcast, right here.
Yes,
this one.
Without a shadow of a doubt, yes.
Quick Shits, as he calls it. The first time I read that in a text from you, I laughed for 10 minutes. That was the funniest shit I'd ever heard. Quick Shits. Well, hey, guys, JFK assassination news and notes in depth is what we do here. And I believe Mr. Rob Clark, sir, you are going to start us out today. Are you, my good man?
Yes. I have a couple topics here, some quick hit topics to share with you guys and discuss a little bit. The
Awesome.
First one I want to talk about here is somebody I know that Bart's looked into a lot, and I want to get his opinion when we get done here. First one I have is a FBI memo from November the 23rd, 1963, and it states this: Roger Craig, employed as a deputy sheriff, Dallas County Sheriff's Department, advised that he was standing in front of the Dallas Sheriff's Office on Main Street at the time the motorcade of President John F. Kennedy was approaching the Triple Underpass. He stated that he heard a shot and ran around the corner onto Houston and went through the parking area and briefly searched area on Elm Street. Shortly after this, approximately 3 or 4 minutes, came back across Elm Street and observed an individual run down the grassy area from the direction of the school book depository. He heard this individual whistle, and a white Rambler station wagon driven by a Negro male pulled over to the curb, and said individual got in, and the car headed toward the Dallas-Fort Worth Turnpike. Craig stated that at 5:18 on November the 22nd, 1963, he was given an opportunity to observe Lee Harvey Oswald in the office of Captain Fritz in the Homicide and Robbery Bureau, and that he is positive that Oswald is identical with the same individual he observed getting in the Rambler station wagon as mentioned above. Now, we're all familiar with this story, fellas, correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think you're referring... Is this the Bookout Report?
No, that's just an FBI memorandum.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it is from Bookout. Yeah.
Right. Okay, because I've got a report with James Bookout, which states that exactly, if I'm not mistaken, that 17 minutes past 5, Roger Craig made his entrance in Will Fritz's office.
Right. I was going to ask you if there was any corroboration to Craig actually being in Fritz's office.
Right. Basically, that document is going to be in my forthcoming release of Anatomy of Lee Harvey Oswald's interrogations. And I found this document in the Blunt archives, and it's not 5:15 or 5:20; it's 5:17 p.m. And that's why I believe.
The document I just read to you, from Bookout, clearly states Craig stated that at 5:18 p.m. November 22nd, he was given an opportunity to observe Lee Harvey Oswald in the office of Captain Fritz.
Exactly. So, that's what it is. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's,
how much weight everybody puts on the Roger Craig story.
No, I think that, and also the next day, I've got quite a segment on Craig with regards to Oswald, him coming into the office, Fritz disowning all this hooey and during the Warren Commission and all that. But Craig also is the next day in the Dallas Times Herald. He's on the front page of the morning edition with his story. It's right next to a picture of LBJ, and he's got the top half of the newspaper. It's like the best spot on the newspaper, and there's a whole interview with Craig on there. And of course that caused a bit of a ruckus, as they say over here. So so that caused quite a few issues. And that, plus that document, confirmed for me that he spoke the truth. On top of that, I also find that the fact that if you check out Craig's observation of him seeing Oswald going down, there are others who also saw this happening. There are 2 or 3 other people who saw a man running down the slope of grass to get into a car as such.
Funny you mentioned that, Bart, because right here on this next document from the FBI, dated November the 23rd, we have a report from Special Agents Almon and Rice about Marvin Robinson of South Marcellus Avenue, advised that approximately between 12:30 and 1 p.m. on the afternoon of November 22nd, while traveling west on Elm Street, he crossed the intersection of Elm and Houston Street shortly after the assassination of President Kennedy. Robinson stated that after he had crossed Houston Street and was in front of the Schoolbook Depository building, a light-colored Nash station wagon suddenly appeared before him. He stated this vehicle stopped and a white male came down the grass-covered incline between the building and the street and entered the station wagon, after which it drove away in the direction of the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. Robinson stated he does not recall the license number on the station wagon or whether or not it bore a Texas license plate. He stated further that he did not pay particular attention to the individual who entered the station wagon and would be unable to identify him. Robinson was unable to furnish any pertinent information concerning the assassination of President Kennedy. But he does remember that small piece of time happening. He just really wasn't paying too much attention to it because he didn't realize probably the possible ramifications of what he was actually seeing. Now, with our friend Marvin Robinson, who was a man by the name of Roy Cooper, he related an incident about a Nash Rambler being seen leaving the building at Elm and Houston on November 22nd. He was driving his car and following his boss, who was driving a Cadillac. They were coming south on Houston and had to wait for the parade, and the incident happened shortly after they reached the intersection. Cooper observed a white male, somewhere between 20 and 30 years of age, wave at a Nash Rambler station wagon, light-colored, as it pulled out and was ready to leave from Elm and Houston. This station wagon pulled out real fast in front of the Cadillac driven by his boss, and his employer had to stop abruptly and nearly hit this Nash Rambler. Cooper could not see who was driving the Nash Rambler and could not furnish any further description of the man who jumped into the car. They drove off at a rather fast rate of speed and went down toward the overpass toward Oak Cliff. Cooper was following his immediate supervisor, Marvin Robinson, who was taking his Cadillac home to Oak Cliff. Cooper was then to pick up Robinson, and they were to get back to their employment in Garland, Texas, in his car. He advised that Marvin Robinson resides on Marcellus Street in Dallas and that the house is 5 doors off Loop 12, but he does not have the exact residence. They are both employed at Ling Temco Vault at Garland, Texas. He stated that Robinson could either be at home today or might be on duty at the Naval Air Station. He believed that Robinson could give further information about the Rambler station wagon, also the driver and the rider. So we have these two other witnesses who knew each other, co-workers, who saw the same thing that Roger Craig did.
Who essentially saw, yeah, exactly, corroborating. But
right, but they didn't really pay much attention to it. Yeah,
I'd never read, going back to that the FBI document concerning Roger Craig. I'd never heard of that document before. I'd never read that.
No, that's from Blunt's archive. I came across this thing. I was just like, oh my God, this is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
this just
for real.
Cements, the whole thing. You've got to put that document right next to Wilfritz's testimony during the Warren Commission on the Roger Craig segment. You just want to read that, and then you look at that document and you just go, well, one of you two is completely full of it. And you can bicker it out amongst each other, you twos. But my money's on Bookout, even though both of them have been faking it big time. But with regards to that, I'd say Bookout speaks the truth. It's just that time element, just 5:18. I mean, come on. It's like, he could easily said 20 past, and he didn't. It's just that specific element of it to it.
Very specific. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is it that just like, okay, hold on a minute. This guy just says he's here in this office as such. So it's just one of those things. But I loved it because, of course, I inserted this in my forthcoming paper.
When you think about it, Roger Craig does strike you as having been a detail-oriented guy. Probably very.
Yeah, he was a decorated.
He was
young
sheriff of the year,
sheriff.
something like that. Yeah, he was.
It says here on December the 9th, Sheriff Bill Decker advised Special Agent Hall that Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig is a reliable employee who is completely honest in his belief that he saw Oswald getting into a white Nash Rambler immediately after the shooting. Even though, of course, this is Bill Decker talking, even though Craig is mistaken in his belief. Decker said that he had discussed this identification with Craig and pointed out to him that witnesses, corroborated by the transfer found in Oswald's possession, showed that Oswald actually left the assassination scene by a city bus. Craig stated to Decker that he was aware of all that, and he knew that this indicated that Craig was mistaken in his identification, but he still saw someone getting into a white Nash Rambler and still believed that this person was Oswald. So basically, Decker's saying, Roger Craig is reliable and honest, but is mistaken in his belief. And Craig reiterating that, no, I am sure that the person I saw was Oswald.
Beautiful. Sometimes it's just, I think next to that you can also put, what's his name? Who wrote The Girl on the Stairs? Barry Ernest. Barry Ernest spoke to Decker, and he had one of his cohorts sit right behind Ernest, and he started to talk about Craig, and the first thing Decker said is that Roger Craig is a liar. That was the first thing he said.
Right. Now, as we go on in time, after Craig is, I don't know if, was he fired or did he just quit the sheriff's office?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, that's another good question.
I'm pretty sure that's, yeah.
That's another good question.
Because I got a document here that's, Roger Craig said a lot of shit over the years until his untimely demise. But this was from, and this is a very hard to read document. I don't know what the hell it's from. It's definitely from Garrison era. There's no date. It just says State of Louisiana affidavit. Roger Craig,
that's
who
for
after
Garrison.
being duly sworn did depose and say this: "My name is Roger Craig, and on November the 22nd, the day of the assassination, I was a deputy sheriff in the Dallas County Sheriff's Department. And in the course of my duties on that date at approximately 12:40 or 12:50, on the steps of the School Book Depository building in Dallas, I spoke with a man who represented himself as a Secret Service agent. This man was standing among some Dallas policemen, and I gave this man information I had concerning Mr. and Mrs. Arnold Rowland, who and the rifle they had seen, and also information about the Rambler station wagon. But the man did not show any interest whatsoever concerning the information about the Rambler station wagon. This man spoke with a smooth voice and was approximately 5'10" in height and had hair darker than blonde, but not very dark. I identify this man from the newspaper clipping, which I have initialed and which is attached, and state that I am positive 100% that this man was Edgar Eugene Bradley."
Really?
Right. Or Jim Braden, whatever you want to call him, who we do have pictures of in front of the School Book Depository. He's the guy that is wearing that fedora hat with the dark sunglasses. And who was
in the Willis photo.
Now, which one of these guys is the one that was the con man that would con rich widows? It's one of those two, Braden or Bradley.
Braden.
There is actually two of them. So it was Braden, right?
Yeah, they snagged him coming out of the the Dow Tech building.
Yeah.
Oh, him.
But that's the con man, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, he was meeting with, I believe, H.L. Hunt and some other oil geologists when he was in town there. And this is the same guy, I believe, who had an office in New Orleans right down the hall from G. Ray Gill in the same building. So that's pretty weird if we have Jim Braden now out in front of the School Book Depository identifying himself to sheriff's officers as a Secret Service agent.
Yeah. And then he runs into the building to make a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you do.
That's in.
Now,
But this witness said that they're positive that's who it was.
Yeah, that's Roger Craig saying he's 100% positive
Craig,
after seeing photos of Edgar Eugene Bradley that this is the person that he talked to and identified himself as a Secret Service agent.
See, I'd never read that. I'd never heard that either, that he ever positively identified. Yeah, that's new to me. That's interesting. And this is out of the Blunt Archives, too.
I can't remember. It might be.
Yeah.
It's either out of there or it's out of the Weisberg Archives, one of the two.
You know, the other thing is about Craig is that Mauser thing, because exactly what he said he saw is exactly what Boone and Weitzman wrote down in their affidavits. This was a Mauser, and Roger Craig always thought he had a good point. I forget which one of those guys owned a sporting goods store for years and years and years, and would have known the difference in a Mauser and a Carcano,
I think that's the same bloke who found the bullet in the grass, wasn't it? Maybe I'm mixing things up.
I don't know.
I know who you mean.
But the two deputies, Boone and Weitzman, they signed an affidavit that they found.
It was Weitzman.
Yeah, found a 7.65 Mauser, just like Roger Craig said that he saw.
To go on here, this next document is definitely a Jim Garrison document from a Mark Lane interview with Roger Craig on October the 25th, 1967 at the Fontainebleau Hotel in New Orleans, Louisiana. Present at this interview are Roger Craig, Jim Garrison, Bill Boxley, and Mark Lane.
Uncle Bill.
Oh, to be in that room, fellas. Of course, they go through and talk to him, and he kind of goes through the events that we've already went over here. And he states that Craig later arrived at police headquarters and told Fritz of the man who left the scene by station wagon. Fritz took Craig to his office where two men were seated, and Craig identified Oswald. Of course, he recognized Oswald seated alongside the desk as the man he had seen in Dealey Plaza. Fritz said to Oswald that Craig saw him enter a car after the assassination, and Oswald became angry, stood up, raised his voice, and as he spoke to almost shouted at Fritz. Oswald said that the station wagon and Mrs. Payne had nothing to do with it. Craig said that Oswald then seemed to realize that he had revealed too much information, having answered by referring to a station wagon. Oswald then, as if in resignation, sat down in his chair and said, "Now everyone will know who I am." Later, Decker told Craig not to discuss his having seen Oswald's exit from the scene with anyone. Decker also said, "You did not see Oswald," implying that, of course, Craig was mistaken. Craig also was on the 6th floor of the depository as other officers went there because of what the Rowlands told Craig. Craig saw the 3 shells, all very close to Craig, suspiciously close together. On the floor, 2 of the shells were touching, and the other shell a 1/4 inch away from the other 2. Craig saw a small grocery bag, but no large paper sack in which the rifle was reportedly carried. So he saw the little bag, the lunch bag with the chicken bones and whatnot, but does not remember seeing a large paper sack. Craig said that he was near a police car radio and was listening to the broadcast, and he said that there was no broadcast of a suspect's description until after Tippit was killed. He was certain of that. When informed, the FBI and Dallas Police Department prepared transcripts of the tapes of the radio broadcast disclosed the description at 12:44. Craig said that the transcripts are incorrect. Craig also said that an officer present at the police show-up for Helen Markham said that she identified a police officer, and not Lee Harvey Oswald, who was also in the lineup, as the murderer of Tippit. It was the identification, in quotes, of Oswald by Mrs. Markham that the commission relied heavily upon as proof that Oswald shot Tippit. When asked about Warren Reynolds, Craig said, quote, "That group of fellas is too tough for me." When asked to explain, he said that the Reynolds auto lot dealt in stolen and stripped cars. He said that Stanfield killed Norman Boss in 61 or 62, and that Boss ran around with Garner, Darrell Wayne Garner.
Well, Warren Reynolds, he did he work at a car dealership or own a car dealership? I do. So
he worked at the one.
Okay, he just worked at one, didn't own one.
Yeah, but this is also the guy who's buddies with General Edwin Walker.
Yeah, General Walker. Yeah, he wasn't he actually there that night? Lived with Walker for a while.
Yeah, I think wasn't Reynolds the one that was shot in the head?
Yeah, the Tippit witness. He lived with General Edwin Walker for a little while. If I'm not mistaken, that's him. And
beautiful.
May have been there the night somebody tried to pop Walker. But I know he was friends with him. But I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. I'm sure that later on this weekend when Ted hears this, he'll remember and let me know. So an update will come on the next. You know what? I may just text him and ask him that. But I believe he lived with Walker and was there the night somebody tried to pop him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to go on here, and like Bart was saying earlier, Craig's proof of his presence in the room could be documented by FBI agent Bookout, who took Craig's name and wrote it on his pad as Craig entered the room, just as he did with all others who entered the office. Yet the sheet with Craig's name is now missing. Craig said that the effect of the announcement that Tippit had been killed was to immediately switch the entire investigation from one which sought the president's assailant to a search for Tippett's murderer. If the assassins were aware that a police officer's death might bring about such a response, if the Dallas Police Department's response was predictable, the role played by the murder of Tippett as part of an escape scheme by the assassins must be evaluated. Even now, the Dallas Police Department betrays a sensitivity to questions about Tippett, Tippett's death, not present when one explores the facts surrounding the assassination. Tippett had been involved with a car hop at Billy's Drive-In on South Lamar. So apparently Tippett was banging shit all over Dallas.
Didn't he have
pieces everywhere?
Wasn't one of them a waitress at the barbecue joint?
Naughty boy.
Yeah.
What was the barbecue joint he worked, quote unquote, security at? Turned out to be owned by a bunch of Birchers, John Birchers, part of the Walker bunch. What was that place called? Austin's Barbecue, is that right? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't he allegedly, he was banging a waitress over there too, I believe.
Yeah, Maxie Witherspoon.
Oh, right.
Craig said that the pressure to fire Jesse Curry as police chief came from Fritz through Elgin Kroll, the city manager. According to Craig, the royal family and law enforcement has Fritz as the king. He ran the entire assassination inquiry and now knows that he was wrong, that there was a conspiracy to kill the president, but does not dare to say so. Decker also knows the Warren report is wrong, but does not want to get involved. Craig said Bill Alexander runs the district attorney's office, and he was close to Ruby. And when asked about Ruby's statement, shit.
Come on.
I must have missed a page.
Oh.
God damn it.
Yeah. I feel your
Oh, no, here we go. Craig's uncle is Roy Vaughn. Vaughn knew Ruby, Craig said, and so he accepts Vaughn's statement that Ruby did not enter the basement by passing him. Craig said that George McGann is tied in with R.D. Matthews. You cannot operate in Dallas without an okay from Matthews. Truman Carter was killed 4 months ago. His brother John is missing, and efforts to locate him after Truman's death were not successful. McGann and R.D. Matthews were suspected of being involved in the Carter murder. After Carter was killed, Fritz moved quickly. He picked up 15 stolen units and 4 material witnesses. He began to search for McGann. McGann had disappeared. Then information reached Fritz that Matthews was involved and was indeed the murderer. Craig said that Matthews likes to do his own killing, and Fritz halted the investigation. McGann returned and called Fritz, asking if he wanted to see him. Fritz replied that he did not, and the case was dropped. So Fritz is dirty as hell, according to Roger Craig. And speaking of Buddy Walters.
Now, Jesse Curry is the one that wrote a book later and said, look, no matter what else you think, we were never able to put that dude in that window holding that rifle. Period. That was
I
Jesse
think you're
Curry,
mixing
right?
two things up. That's Peter Dill Scott's video.
But that was, he didn't put that in his book.
That is not in his book, I think.
It was not in his book? Okay, I am getting that.
It's an interview in Dealey Plaza between Peter Dill Scott and Curry in the 70s.
That's a hell of an admission. I don't get the sense that he was crooked as hell like Fritz was.
No, it was.
You know, what about you guys? Because what I'm saying, Rob, you're right. Fritz was crooked as hell. But
bent, utterly bent. Here's the thing: to make it really simple for both of you and everyone else. Okay, I don't believe Bill Fraser on a lot of things, but I believe his story about having a confession. A pre-signed confession ready for him, so all he had to do is sign it, read it, and sign it, and basically admit he was part of the assassination as such. Now, I'm sorry, I don't know what you guys think about justice in your country, but I thought you have quite a high standard of that, and seeing the captain of robbery and homicide basically shove a piece of paper that basically says that you'll go, well, minimum life prison, or even worse, the chair, by just putting your signature on that, and that he basically could just do with you whatever he wanted and just get it over and done with. This is a guy who's got a 98% clearance rate. How on earth do you get a 98% clearance rate? For 1963, that would mean he'd clear 2 murders a week on average.
Yeah, it's insane.
The high end of the average is like probably what, in the 40s?
50-60%, roughly 50%. That's what it hovers on these days.
And those are the overachievers, right? The overachievers are doing 50-60.
Yeah, but if Will Fritz was right with what he was doing, and that 98% would, take care of the crime and all that la-di-da, then every police force in the world would copy his methods. But that's the issue. What are these methods? Because there are stories of people being sent to the chair over nothing and just being accused of raping, black guy raping a white woman, stuff like that. And you know what I read? I thought that the Jim Crow laws were actually abolished in the 60s, but they were about to be abolished around the time that the assassination happened. It was 63, 64. That's around the time when...
I'm sure when they were abolished, well, they didn't immediately comply. I'm sure it was.
That's another thing. On top of that,
yeah.
That's why I think we didn't get the truth from all the black eyewitnesses of the assassination.
They were scared.
Yeah.
Well, you can read that really well in what's his name from the Texas School Book Depository. It's not Eddie Piper, but it's the other guy.
Bonnie Williams.
No. He was on the 5th floor. The guy was on the first floor with. It's not Edward Shields either. He basically is so scared he doesn't want to say anything during his Warren Commission testimony. Eddie Piper needs to be dragged back in just to confirm that Baker and Truly were coming into the office as such, and because the first attempt was just diabolical, it didn't go anywhere. And you know what, he was scared as well, because he had a DUI from 10 years before that, 51 or 52. Think about it, a DUI is basically at that time the hell of a lot of leverage for the police. You got a record, so that's it. That's another
a couple
thing.
More things here from Craig.
Go on.
Referring to Buddy Walters, he says this. He said that a federal narcotics agent found Buddy Walters growing marijuana in his backyard. He also was found to be shaking down prostitutes for half of their total gross, which appears to exceed the normal take.
Every bit of that is 100% believable. 100% believable.
On the force. Craig said that Walters has seen Decker's secret file, and thus Decker cannot fire him. The file evidently has information about many persons and many events. And he says this, something strange. A guy named James Stevenson is in Dallas, and he has a letter from Jack Ruby from prison. It was smuggled out by a trustee. It names Henry Wade, Fritz, and Batchelor. Stevenson's father was in jail at the time. And then he says there was a reference to Jack Lawrence in the Dallas newspaper not long after November 24, 63, and it is said that Fritz generally did not take notes. This, said Craig, is untrue. Now, it's interesting that he mentions Jack Lawrence. As we all know the story of Jack Lawrence, I'm sure, right, fellas?
Yes.
He was working at the downtown Lincoln Mercury that day.
Yep.
And he allegedly did not show up for work the morning of the 22nd until after the assassination, when he came in kind of muddied and dirty, disheveled, frantic, and I believe he was throwing up in the bathroom.
Threw up in a mop sink.
Yeah, and he had borrowed a demonstrator car, I guess the day before, that he didn't bring back. He couldn't get the car back to the dealership because it was parked behind the grassy knoll in the sheriff's lot back there. And they weren't letting any vehicles out of there. So that's how he returned on foot. But the other interesting story with the whole downtown Lincoln Mercury thing is that Jack Lawrence was interviewed on November the 23rd by Special Agent Edwin Kuykendall. And it says this: the Jack Lawrence, residing at the YMCA on Irvay Street, Dallas, Texas, downtown Lincoln Mercury Commerce and Industrial, advised Kuykendall telephonically that Oswald was in that establishment about a week ago and spoke to employees Al Bogard and Frank Pizzo, sales manager, about wanting to buy an automobile. Oswald allegedly told one of these men that he had no money then, but in a couple of weeks he would have money to buy a car for cash. Agents inquired of Lawrence for home addresses of Bogard and Pizzo in order that they could be later interviewed. He attempted to secure their addresses, and they advised Lawrence that they would speak for themselves. He was unable to obtain from them their addresses. He said that they would be working today until 9 p.m. Lawrence said they knew Oswald as a customer and have his name written down on a card from the meeting. So there are a couple interesting things there. Jack Lawrence staying at the YMCA. Who else stayed at the YMCA in Dallas?
Lauren Hall, Lawrence Howard,
Lee
Seymour,
Oswald,
I believe. Yeah, Lee Oswald. All those, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, who like to work out at the YMCA
Who's that?
and go for a swim?
Who's that?
Jack Ruby.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Where else can
Like
you
to
go
go
find
for a
some
swim.
smooth young boys in bathing suits in Dallas, Texas?
Boys.
Allegedly.
Naughty boys.
Allegedly.
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 That's my favorite caveat right there.
And I got one more thing for you guys, and then I'll let Bart have the floor.
Oh, dear.
From December the 22nd, 1993, to Louis Freeh, director of the FBI.
Oh, okay. This
Dear-
sounds interesting. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's CCing the Attorney General Janet Reno, the CIA Director James Woolsey, who I actually released a very weird audio segment on my From the Vault podcast. If you want to go check that out, about Operation Dragon and the JFK assassination from James Woolsey's mouth.
Mr. Rob,
It says
I got that notification this morning when I got up. I have it ready to go there on my YouTube thing. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm a
that's
subscriber.
actually from CIA. It's from CIA Director James Woolsey. But this one here is to Director Freeh. There are quite a few of us eyewitnesses to the conspiracy to assassinate JFK who are still very much alive. I just returned from Dallas, Texas last month, where I met, among other people, a Mr. Warren Burroughs. He witnessed the arrest of Lee Harvey Oswald at the Texas Theater on November 22nd, 1963. Burroughs also saw Oswald's double being arrested and taken out the back door of the theater at about the same time that Oswald was being taken out the front. There were other witnesses to this event as well. Hours later, on that same day, I personally saw this double, who fit the description of one Alex Heidel, whose ID Oswald was carrying at the time of his arrest. This person got on the same bus I was on at a small airport near Houston and was being escorted and treated as a prisoner. A couple of years ago, I reported this and other facts to the FBI Special Investigator Sandra White at the Tampa, Florida office. Yet the Bureau now says they have no files or information on me. How can this be? And more importantly, how long is this cover-up of the coup d'etat going to erode the American people's confidence in our government? Can you help us gain back a little truth and justice? Sincerely, Jim Glover. Now, normally when kooks write the FBI or the CIA or tell them weird shit, they don't really warrant a response. But per FBI Director Louis Freeh, they decided to answer this cat. Dear Mr. Glover, your December 22nd letter to Director Freeh has been received, and he asked me to respond personally. The copy you sent to Attorney General Reno was also referred to the FBI. Our representatives in Tampa carefully evaluated the material you provided in 1991, and copies have been made available to our Dallas office, which has been involved in the investigation into the assassination of President Kennedy. However, this material is not contained in the files at FBI headquarters in Washington, where your Freedom of Information Act request was directed. If you have additional firsthand information of a specific nature regarding that assassination, you may provide it to our Tampa office or directly to our Dallas office, which is located in room 300, North Lamar, Dallas, Texas. Sincerely yours, Michael Knapp, Inspector Deputy Chief Office of Public and Congressional Affairs. Have a great day, sir. I believe that fella is on Facebook somewhere. I do remember seeing that name. Sounds familiar. Jim Glover. I don't know.
You know what? I was thinking the same thing. But I was thinking, wait a minute, is he a witness I saw interviewed somewhere, or is he somebody I saw on social media? But I'm like you, it's a tad bit familiar.
Yeah, it's interesting that I'd never heard about the whole double coming out the back of the Texas Theater that long ago. I mean, this is the early 90s. Before John Armstrong's book, before James Douglas's book.
Yeah, James Douglas's book, yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought that was an interesting nugget that he could throw out there. But of course, it came from Warren Burroughs, who I believe is Butch Burroughs from the Texas, the theater there, who's allegedly sold Oswald popcorn at close to 1 o'clock. So take that with what you will. That's all I got for this week on Quick Shits. Mr. Bart, please tell the people what you've been up to.
Oh, boy.
It's been, let's see. It started in 2018. It started earlier. It happened when I became a member of Dealey Plaza UK in 2014. We used to have 6 meetings a year in a pub in the East Central London, where we would meet on a Saturday, and the pub was normally closed but only open for us, which was really nice. We have been doing it until about 3 years ago, and then we moved on to a different one. Then COVID kicked in. But basically, during those meetings where we were and chatting, Malcolm Blunt's name kept coming up. And I said, does he ever show up here? No. He says, but he's very good at what he does, blah, blah, blah. But he'll come to probably our Canterbury seminar. So for those that don't know, Dealey Plaza UK holds a weekend seminar in Canterbury, which is southeast below London. And Malcolm would come there. So I met Malcolm for the first time in 2016 when I did a really long talk on my own work. And just chatting left here and there during dinner, as well as sitting next to him, and I just talk, and just heard all the bits that he was doing here and there. And I did an interview with him on the Sunday as well. So we just chatted, and then Tony Basing was dropping him off at the station because he was leaving like Sunday about 3 o'clock, and he had quite a journey ahead of him because he lives in the west of England. And we he came back, Tony Basin came back and gave me a USB stick, and he said, that's from Malcolm. I said, what's on it? He says, I don't know. So I said, okay. So there was about 2 gigabytes in PDF documents that he had from his recent trip to Nara. And there was a lot of Nosenko material in, which absolutely meant nothing to me. I have to tell you that I've had a generic education up to an extent when it comes to the JFK assassination. The second I started to specialize in only one thing, which is Oswald's last 40-odd hours.
You know, Bart, that the Nosenko stuff has always been a little hard for me to wrap my head around.
You and other people. But basically, to get back to that, the documentation that was on that stick, the majority of it didn't say much to me, but there was a really good document from the Central Intelligence Agency on there. What they'd done was they put a schematic together over, I think, 3 or 4 A4s, and basically looked at the Texas School Book Depository employees, what they were doing, and so forth. So from an analytical point of view, it's a really good document. It coming from the Central Intelligence Agency is even more telling. But and this is how it started with Malcolm. He gave me those documents, digital ones, and then all of a sudden I started getting an A4 sized envelope with 20 pages in it, and they was like, oh, I found this, and I thought I didn't know how it worked back then, because he basically was just sending me some documents, like, for instance, about the timings of people inside the Texas School Book Depository to come down from the 6th floor and so forth, in conjunction with the 2nd floor linesroom account, it is that and the other. So he'd send that to me, or about the elevators as well, the whole thing. Basically, all the a Warren Commission document that basically tried to stitch the whole thing together, that they themselves also had issues with it. So in the end, it's an enigma, the whole thing about the elevators. So slowly I was getting these documents, and I shared them through my Prayer Man website.
Yeah.
And this was around like 2016, 17, and so forth. And then in 2018, I was in the hospital. I was in there for 10 days, and I came out and I go, I've got to do something. I said, you know what, this whole thing with Malcolm, it's not really moving forward much, because I get an envelope here, an envelope there. I said, I want to go in there and just collect a bunch of stuff. And also, Malcolm asked me back in 2016, like, can you digitize some audio tapes for me? And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. It's not that difficult. You buy yourself like a Walkman, old school Walkman style device.
Yeah.
With a USB connector and a little CD-ROM, and with the program, boom, it's just a walk in the park to do so. I said, yeah, I'll do that. It's not a problem. And and he says, yeah, I've got a handful. There wasn't a handful. There's about 250 to 300 cassette tapes from Harry Livingston's collection, and also Malcolm's collection. Oh, wow. Some HSCA stuff. So it was starting. So once we started talking about this, it was Harry Livingston's archive I was supposed to digitize. And so after that operation that I had, 2 weeks later, I said, I'm coming over. I said, I need to see what's going on. So the first day, I just went on a bus for about 3 hours west, and came in there, and he took me to a place that was from his house, was 45 minutes away in the Cotswolds. For those that don't know, the Cotswolds are a very scenic. It's a very scenic area. It's hilly and it's beautiful England, and you like to drive around and have views, this, that, and the other. That's the Cotswolds. Even the Romans liked it, so they left their stuff there.
Bart, let me ask you a question. Before this first initial trip, right? Yeah. Before this first initial trip to see Malcolm, did you have any idea of the scope of how many documents he had?
No,
it wasn't until this trip.
Else. It's taken me 2 years to figure it out. since first arrival, and starting to play with it, it has taken me 2 years to figure out how much was left at some point, and whether I'd finished something, and how much I'd done, etc., etc. But I'll get back to that in a minute.
There was a previous episode. I told Rob about the photograph you texted me of just the bags of documents.
Oh yeah,
that you were loading in the back of the car.
Yeah. It's just at first I just went in a bus and I took a trolley, and the problem with Malcolm was that when I went to the Tetbury residence there's a really nice big house that was used for a lawyer's office, and he had put it on the market, and basically there was about a 4 to 6 months window to do this. You see, nothing was planned, and all of a sudden I was looking at Harry Livingston's stuff, and I just looked at it, and the thing is that Livingston had quite a reputation amongst other people, amongst other researchers, and he was more or less become persona non grata for a lot of people out there. But what I give him,
especially to
credit for, but what I give Livingston a lot of credit for is that he called everybody. He called everyone. He taped every phone call. He called every doctor, surgeon, Navy cadet, la-di-da-di-da. He called them all. Anyone he knew or could find out the phone number of, he'd call. But of course, there was also fights and bickering on tapes. There are, we're talking the period from, what I had of his collection is, say, from 89 until 94.
Was he prone to giving them the old Weberman treatment sometimes then, I guess? Because, there are tapes of Weberman interviewing Jerry Patrick Hemming, and they're just screaming at each other across the damn room.
I have heard one tape where basically one of the producers of the JFK film is talking to Livingston. And Livingston has basically been hammering them and for stealing and using Grodin and blah, blah, blah. And it was a huge mess, that whole thing. I don't want to go really into it because it's really negative, and it's between Livingston and Grodin and Lifton, and then later on Mark Crouch was also involved, and it is all about the autopsy pictures and who wrote what, and it's yards of paper that I've had in my hands and went through, and it's just not pretty to look at all. But on top of that, Livingston did really, really valuable work by calling all these people regarding the medical thing. His findings, I don't agree with them, but I thought it was quite courageous because a lot of people in this game, I've made a few phone calls, but nothing like what Harry Livingston has done. And I'll tell you what, though, there's a lot of people that talk a lot, a big game in this thing, but never manage to make one phone call to anyone, so they can always say no. So that's the whole thing. But for some reason, a lot of people are really scared to do that. So from the Livingston archive, I looked at it and I was like, I've got a copy of this. And I did that. I started copying the tapes, videotapes, and then I started doing all the folders. And his folders were really neatly organized. So I started copying all them, scanning them in. And then in February, after doing this for about 2.5 months, I started looking into Malcolm's collection. And then when I looked at Malcolm's collection, I looked at his old stuff, because his recent stuff from, say, the last 10, 20 years is a lot of agency-related material. But before that, he worked with Armstrong, and he was basically a resident at the Dallas Municipal Archives. And he got every document he would try to get his hand on. And he had a very good partner in crime, between quotation marks, regarding this. The archivist over there, Cindy Smolovic, and she helped him out. And he said she was a big help. And,
people don't get
Malcolm has got...
I was going to ask, Bart, give people a sense of how much time Malcolm, Mr. Blunt, has spent at the archives over here in the
the last 25 years he's been there. But the last few years, of course, not. But before that, so from the mid-90s, 95, 96, around that time.
But he would come over here and rent an apartment for 6 months at a time or something.
He's lived about a mile away, less than a mile away from Nara, I think.
Oh wow!
And he stayed there for about 6 months, and then he's got FOIAs running. He's got all kinds of requests running. I saw all the leaflets and little snaps of paper where he writes down what to order and so forth. And then email, of course, starts emailing now, and that's something that a lot of people can do now. Before that, it was all snail mail, and a lot of people don't know how it actually works inside NARA. Because whatever the RIF number doesn't mean, RIF number, it's here. No. They have to check that with their index, and then you go to a particular area. And he says, like, these days it's much more stricter. You get less boxes on a card. I had somebody trying to source something as well for me, and he spent like a day and a half there, and then he couldn't handle it anymore. He was like, I've had enough. I'm leaving, because it was so frustrating. You need to be very patient to deal with it. So what I've done now over this whole period of time, when I started, especially with Malcolm's archive in Feb 2019, was, give or take, I've done about 150,000 pages that are ready for release during Assassination Weekend, what I call it, the 20th and the 21st, I think, this year. And there'll be a master link. And that master link will give you access to a lot of files, and I mean a lot of files. And these, you've sent Rob and I and different people. You do send things out to people as you've been going through this, so the researchers. Oh yes. And Rob and I have certainly benefited from that. But I'm sure that the reams of stuff that you sent us probably is just a fraction of what is about to be available to everybody. Right? I mean, everybody had access to quite a lot of stuff, because I started consolidating some folders, so they started to show up inside other folders, like especially the agency and FBI. They got a lot of folders added. But what you'll get is you'll get O&I records, you'll get customs records, you'll get DOJ. The Oswald file itself is huge. New Orleans is massive.
Yeah, buddy.
Clay Shaw and Ferry and Oswald and Bannister and the whole Garrison trial. I sent Jim Eugenio all the Garrison stuff, and he's used some of it to annihilate Fred Lidwin with it, rightly so.
I have too.
Paul
used
Blow
that.
Used the FPCC stuff as well in his article. I gave him access to everything that was connected to the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. There are others. There's a lot of heavy hitters that have been served with material in the background. And on top of that, Dealey Plaza UK's Facebook group is the only place where I post some of the documents that aren't online. So this is basically the cream of the whole collection.
Yeah.
What I found out from the last almost 18 months is that I started to check the RIF numbers on the documents that had RIF sheets attached to them. And I found out that, well, I'd say anything between 25 and 35% of this collection is not online. And what do we mean by not online? Is that although these records are released officially, they aren't in the collections of the 2017 and the 2018 bunch. Some of them were released even in the 90s. Now, there's probably an explanation. I think they didn't re-release digitally the documents from the 90s that were released then. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Joe Baxter can tell me that, but I don't think so. But those ones don't have a real, internet appearance as such. So what I mean by not online means that document does not exist online. It can exist in the Federal Register, which is nothing but a document made out of hundreds of pages filled with RIF numbers. Or if you, for example, do the search in Google with a RIF number. Now, the RIF number is a 13-digit number with 2 hyphens after 3 digits and after another 5 digits. So you're talking 3-5-5 numbers. And you can get a calculation in, of course, because they look like minuses. So the first thing Google does is turn it into a calculation, and you'll be like minus 20,000. Then the best you can get after, that's the worst result you can get, because that's the only mention of that particular riff number. So there's no trace anywhere else about this particular riff number. Then the second best is it being mentioned in the Federal Register. And the best, of course, is that, because that saves me from having to scan it in, is the riff number is at Merryfarrell or at Nara or at the Black Vault as such. They're like three, 4 competitors to what I'm doing. But so now it has come, so I only scan and publish the bits that either don't have a riff sheet or have a not online mark on it. So anything that's online, there's no point of me nabbing it or scanning it for the upteenth time, because there are already 3 copies at least. I mean, out of all the archives online, I think Merryfarrell is best stocked, better than Nara as well. So, you know, Rex Bradford is doing an absolute superb job. They're working on a massive project now as well, with the ARC together, and you know, there's going to be more and more stuff coming, just tons of stuff coming. And you know, the Project JFK guys also, they're working on Gary Shaw's archive, and they are working with what's his name, who wrote Dick Russell's archive as well. So, you know, there's things coming over the next few years. There's more and more coming. So the whole Biden thing, yeah, whatever, you know, it's nothing. I'm more concerned about the amount of paper that's just not online. That's my concern. And I've got a folder filled with riffs, 150, 200 pages in there. And I'll tell you what, there's 80, 90% in there that's just not online. That's just, you know, and some of them I know, like, and I'm keep thinking like, yeah, that's all from the 90s batch. And it just looks like they never digitized the 90s batch for some strange reason.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, yeah. I mean, that was way back in the day, so.
Yeah, and on top of that, then I've got...
doing it back then.
Yeah, on top of that, I've got 5-6 documents, although I need to find them again, that basically Malcolm got before they got reclassified. Now, in our Facebook group as well, Joe Bax posted about one document 2 weeks ago. So what it is that Malcolm goes, say, for instance, in 2004, and he picks up a document and he gets it Xeroxed and takes it home. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, or whatever time frame, there's a reclassification. So they start redacting stuff. And before you know it, you just all of a sudden you see 25 to 50% more redaction in that same document that Malcolm had. And that's beautiful, because then you can see what they're actually doing. And there's about half a dozen instances of that in the archive as such. So what I did was, every time I'd get in the first 3, 4, 5 visits, I went by bus, and I had a little trolley, and I put 3 big shopping bags on top of each other. And then that wasn't enough, because every time when I came back from Tetbury, we went to Malcolm's house, and we just sat there and we went out for dinner, and then we'd come back, and then we'd go to his attic. And he had all these folders, and he'd go, oh, I've got this FBI report, and this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Before you knew it, I had another bag full, and I'm going, I can't take this with me. I have to carry this separately, blah, blah, blah. So then I was getting his transatlantic suitcase, which was even bigger, and it was so stuffed with so much paper that the cab driver asked me whether I had a corpse in there because it was that heavy. And so did the bus driver as well. They both said, my God, this is heavy. And it was. Paper is heavy, that's for sure. And then we started doing car trips. And then I was taking 10 bags at a time. And Peter Antil has been helping me for the last 2 years doing this. Tony Basing did it before that. And I took as many bags with me as possible, and tapes and VHS videotapes as well. And just non-stop copying, non-stop. So my tally at this point is 150,000 pages, about 12,000 PDFs. I've got some good high-res imagery of some things, Oswald and a Marine, things like that, all from Nara. Backyard photos, I've got really good copies for the backyard photos. I made scans of Kodachrome slides, which I suspect are from Jack White. And they're very good reproductions. Jack White was a professional photographer, just like me, and so he did a very, very good job. And I managed to scan these in at 4K, so
boom,
nice and chunky. So they're
Nice and
150
chunky.
megs big. Yeah, they're 150 megs big. So they'll be shared as well at some point. It's all coming out.
Anything revealing? Anything jump out at you regarding those scans? When you scanned them in such a good quality.
Douglas, I'm telling you, all of it. Because
Really?
this is the thing. Okay, yeah, because I'll tell you what. Okay, in a nutshell, I was raised on JFK the movie. Okay, so we're talking Garrison. I'm reading Garrison's book. I read Jim Mars's book, John Mellon's books, Jim Eugenio's first and second editions. And, slowly I started to look at other things, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden in 2013, I started to go into Prayer Man and started looking into the TSBD. And basically at that point I said, because I made that decision right after the 50th anniversary, I remember still, that I said, you know what, if you want to do something, focus on one subject and one subject only. And that took me about 2 or 3 months to think about before I finally said, no, I'm doing Prayer Man, because Prayer Man is the only thing to me that can solve the case and throw it wide open. And everything will tumble, just like a deck of cards. Because if you show that Oswald's on the steps, then everything else is fucked. So then you have to redo and rethink everything. Everything will need to be reinvestigated, etc. Like that's going to happen. It isn't, but I'm saying if you want to solve this, then you have to. Then that is one. Probably to me, it's the best thing that you could do to investigate as such. So I basically shut myself out from anything else. When people start talking to me about stuff, I go, I'm not really interested. So all of a sudden I start now doing this archive.
Yeah.
And then I start reading all this stuff on New Orleans, Orest Pena, Warren the Bruce, those shenanigans.
Man, that guy,
Yeah.
FBI
That's
agent
awesome.
Warren DeBreeze,
Love
yeah.
that.
Exactly, but that's
There
awesome
is-
stuff to read. It's absolutely awesome stuff to read. And
Rob-
it's in great detail. That's the beauty of it. The documents are just in great detail, show all what these federal agents are up to.
Rob uploaded something, on your The Lone Gunman Podcast YouTube channel. It was in the From the Vault, and I wish I could remember which documentary it was that you uploaded. It might have been the CBS thing with Dan Rather, maybe, that had a short interview with Warren DeBreeze in it. Very short, 20, 30 seconds. And he comes off as a real smug, ill-tempered shitbag is the way that guy comes off, And of course, guys, we're talking about an FBI agent that worked in Oh, no. Somebody administer the Heimlich to Bart. Something's going on over there. I don't know.
So I found that. So let's just say that I got a whole new education.
Yeah.
But I got a really high-level education, because here's the thing about the Central Intelligence Agency. I admire all the research that's being done in it, but I read it. I don't debate any of it because I don't feel qualified to do so, but I read a lot about it. And now I got even to read more about it. But then you've got Malcolm Blunt, and Malcolm is just completely on a different level. Just totally different in the sense that he went through the old stuff that I'm still doing 25 years ago. Then he goes to the Cuban thing. A lot of people don't know this. 3-4 years. He frequented Florida and did bits. He was part of the people that met Hemming. He hung out with Gordon Winslow. It was a period that I didn't know about. And then you get the whole Central Intelligence Agency stuff. The funny thing is that when I talk to him about the old stuff, I basically refresh his memory, because he's been out of that whole thing. And then when it comes to the agency, he's got memory that you just go, my God. And he's got a knack for reading the documents and understanding what's actually going on in the euphemistic language as such. He can read signatures. He knows whose signature, like Alan Dulles' or Hoover's little thing, and so forth, who's behind it as such. And then
let me ask you a question.
Go on then.
Have you ever talked to Malcolm Blunt? I mean, all the shit that he's seen, every nook and cranny of information that's in his brain.
Yeah.
What is his opinion on what happened with the JFK assassination? I mean, I'm sure he's got to have one.
Yeah, he's not very open about. He doesn't deal in speculation that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Him and I have a pet hate about sentences that start with I think what happened was.
Hey, but you know what? We all do it. You do it. We all do it.
I have.
That's how.
I have been doing it.
That's
I
how
have,
we
yeah.
develop our thought patterns. The only way, people that see that kind of gets on my nerves a little bit. With people, I never speculate. Well, if you didn't speculate, you would never think about the material.
Well, I've stopped speculating because I let myself lead by the documentation. That's what I've done.
Yeah, but
That's
you
changed.
speculate. We speculate on what this document means.
That's informed speculation.
Yeah, but still, I don't know. Maybe I'm splitting hairs, but
No.
everybody
the thing
does
is also, I understand there's a difference in speculation. Is that when people say like, "I think what happened was," and I go, "Okay, so where's the material to where you built this on?" And of course, that's then there's I only hear crickets, and there's a lot of quietness around, basically, because they can't prove it or put anything forward as such.
I'm a lot more.
I should stay in this game. I want to be in this game only for one reason: is to get the evidence, and the evidence says this. Now, unless you can show it's faked, the evidence, or backdated, or whatever. Other than that, I just say, okay, those are the reports they make, like the Bookout report and such. Now, those are really vital reports because they either contradict or they confirm something that a lot of people thought about before but couldn't put forward as such. Now you've got a document like that, and you basically say, right, I'm saying this because I've got this piece of paper to support that. That makes more of an impression on me than just people on Facebook or whatever forum just spewing their so-called
I was just saying, because no other human being has probably seen more documentation than Malcolm has seen firsthand.
That's true.
And I was just wondering, if he had ever
I'm gonna what the funny thing is that you
one
bring
way or
this
the
up
another.
This morning I thought, because I did an interview with Malcolm yesterday. We spoke for almost 3 hours, and I did 2 interviews. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do a different type of interview next time, because I just want to know what his take is on the Zapruder film, about the autopsy, this, that, and the other. Here's the thing as well. The strength of Malcolm's archive is that it contains everything on almost every subject possible. You see, it's
Bart,
like a Weisberg archive, basically. That's how it feels.
Write this question down.
Go on.
The conspiracy to cover up did go all the way up to the top.
Feds, definitely.
But did the conspiracy to murder and frame go all the way to the top? See, I would submit not.
No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But that again is speculation. The thing is, what you can reasonably good proof that says that the FBI was really on top of it, and in the sense of getting things disturbed and sent the wrong direction. The paperwork, the best example of a total mess is the evidence, the Oswald evidence, and the photographic reproduction of it as such. Okay, so Malcolm investigated this back in the late 90s, and the best he could come up with it were 6 scenarios based on the material. And the thing is that the documentation, because the documentation, the dates, do not correspond with the working process of, did the DPD now use the films of the Dallas police, or did they reshoot the evidence themselves? Because the FBI picked up the evidence that night already, first of all, and then got more a few days after, and they worked with that particular evidence. So the so-called, you would almost say, call it the chain of evidence of the actual evidence itself and the photography of it, because the FBI comes back and says there are several frames missing due to mechanical failure, blah, blah, blah. This is like an idiot-proof camera. Yeah, it's got like, no, this is like a camera that's on a little, when you have, when you're making reproductions, you've got it on a pole that runs at an angle above it. So you have your camera mounted on it, it points straight down. That's basically what it is. And this is a camera with a little wind-up mechanism and a button and a release button. It's not about focusing or lighting, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not technical at all. Place here, click the button, transport to the next frame, job done. Enter the next one.
Right.
So, and all of a sudden there are 50-odd frames missing, and they have nothing on it. And this is where it gets really interesting. And then trying to put a scenario together as such. So I said to Malcolm, I'll tell you what, once I've got some time, because what I did is I kept all the paperwork. And he's even got every bloody frame that's overexposed. He's got a photocopy of it. What's wrong with it? He's got a copy of the actual evidence film as well. It's not a great quality copy. It's 35mm. I had it scanned in, and it's all coming out, and we're going to do a really big piece of it. It'll take a while, but that's a very good indicator of just messing around with the evidence and the representation of it as such. It just doesn't coincide with what the DPD did. So, and you know what? There are several instances where the DPD and the FBI just did not get along together. The Minox is another thing. I mean, the Minox was found by Gus Rose.
Right.
And the feds wanted him to change that and change it to a light meter. And he says, I'm not doing that. So I know what a light meter is, and I know what a camera is. Boom. That was that.
Bart.
Yes.
Speaking of the Minox.
Yeah.
I want to get your opinion on a document. Get Rob, you too, man. This document. When you said Minox, I remembered this. Alan Dale sent me this here a while back. Okay, this is an FBI report. Report of the FBI Federal Bureau of Investigation, Washington, D.C., date December 4th, 1963. Bureau request 11/25/63. Okay. Starts out like this. Request comparison of Minox film recovered from possessions of Lee Harvey Oswald in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, 11/22/63, Dallas, Texas, case with specimen Q5. Okay? Then it says result of examination. It has been determined that the questioned Minox film designated as specimen Q5 in this case was not exposed in the same camera as Minox film recovered from the possessions of Lee Harvey Oswald, parenthetically item 377, in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Under date of December 4, 1963, the FBI laboratory furnished the following information to the New York office in their case captioned LOCFAB, LOCFAB, New York file 6522483, request comparison, and it just repeats that. But so they have some Minox film they've designated Q5 that they got from somewhere. That it was very important that they compare it with the Oswald Minox camera to see if they matched. So my question would be, well, I wonder, what's Q5? What's in there? You know, never actually says where they got it, what it might have been.
I can't tell you that right now. I'd have to. You see, the thing is, I've got a bunch of documents that I need to look into. See, my problem is that when I started working on this collection, first of all, speed was king, because by the end of May, my adventure at that time was going to end because the material that was stored in the Tetbury venue, the Tetbury property, was basically to be sent to the States, and that didn't happen. It went to a warehouse, and in the meantime, while it was in the warehouse from, say, the middle of 2019 till December 2020, I didn't have access to it. So almost, 18 months. And in the time in between, I just did files that were at Malcolm's house. So I was just obliterated with CIA documents and FBI documents as such, and bag after bag after bag. I think all in all, I've done at least 100 bags together that you see in those photographs. And I found out roughly 3 bags is about 4,000 to 5,000 pages.
Oh, wow. Take. That's a bunch. But isn't that an interesting document? It's like, well, sorry? I said, isn't that an interesting document? It's like, well, what the hell's on Q5? Why? Yeah. Where'd you get that? Why was it important to make the comparison?
Yeah, if you have interest in this case, then there's just this archive is just a candy store. That's the way
there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I've done. I can think of 4 episodes of my podcast that I did just in probably the last 18 months that were spurred on by something I found in that cache of Jim Garrison documents that you sent me.
Yeah, there's a lot of names in that folder where you just go, never heard of this guy, never heard of it. And who is this? I
can't speak for Rob.
The scope.
I was going to say I can't speak for Rob, but I bet he does the same thing I do. Sometimes, Rob, it's like, well, it's time to write another podcast. Well, let's go over here to this stuff Bart sent us and just leaf around for a little while.
Yeah.
And boom, it happens.
Spare time. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's what I did in 2015.
There's nothing better than diving into the documents and seeing what you can find.
Yeah, in 2015, I spent a year at the Weisberg archive at Hood College, just going through it, finding, reading. I wasn't dealing with books anymore. I was just like, no, let's read all this stuff, the documents. I want to know the specifics, because that's what you're basically talking about. Because books are based on documents and on interviews, and then all of a sudden you get your hands on documents that aren't that easily to obtain. And
man,
Malcolm basically.
I get that great. From people. I get. A lot of us do still read all the books that come out, on the subject. And I get, dude, I'm like you. People will say, well, haven't you read this or haven't you read this? Well, I've read about it. And, but that primary resource documentation is probably where 90% of my studies and research is. The document archives.
You get the details, the nitty-gritty, and the things that set the tone of what you're actually doing is in documentation. When I read a book, I always get to a point when the writer goes, and such did this, and blah, 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 on that date, la-di-da-di-da, and I'm going, oh, yeah? What's your source for that? That I need to know. And then I end up going to the back of the book. And then it refers to some Warren report, which of course goes like 7H513SD, blah, 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 whatever, some code for the Warren report. And I'm going, well, that's not really what I want. I want easier access to it. I really had a nightmare with the Douglas book because, first of all, I tried to read that in bed, and you can forget about that. That book's too heavy for your wrist. You can't hold it up. You can't just lean on one side and hold it up like that. I'm going, my God, this book is killing my wrist just holding up. It's just 1,300 pages.
Oh, wow.
So, and I was like, you know what? Let's just find documents. And I got really interested in documents from the end of 2014, early 2015. That's when I really started doing it. And, the beauty of this is like, okay, so there's a lot of material that is not online. But on top of that, I've also started to work on a system where you have subfolders, and these subfolders point to correspondence and letters. So you've got, for instance, G. Robert Blakey of the HSCA writing to Scott Breckenridge, and all they do is request records, and that all that traffic in between the two of them, so there's letters from Breckenridge to Blakey and vice versa. So inside CIA is a folder, and inside HSCA is a folder and relating to this correspondence as such. So it took me almost 2 years to figure out the picture of the actual archive, what it actually resembled, and and I didn't even know until maybe 5 months ago how much was left over to do, because it was doing my head in, because I was like, for at least almost a year that I just went, Malcolm, I don't have a clue how much is left, and it's doing my head in, because I want to see an end to this, and I've had enough of it, blah, blah, blah. And, and then all of a sudden last year, this old Tetbury archive came back into the equation. And that took me a good 7 months to finish, maybe 8, to actually finish that. And I've done, so that was kind of a really nice feeling to finish that. But then I was like, well, how much is left at home? And then I just saw drawer after drawer after drawer, and I was like, oh my God, this is just absolutely mental. And then he comes walking up to the front of me and just has a box of tape in his hands. I just turn around, and all of a sudden, and I go, I thought I'd done all the audio tapes. Well, I found these. And I was like, yeah, go on, give them to me. Yeah, and then the same thing went, at one time, I was like, I knew exactly what was done inside the warehouse archive and which drawers were empty, and all of a sudden there were 3 drawers filled with archives. And I go, how'd they get here? And he went, well, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, sure. So it's just like, okay, I thought I was finished. No, there's another 6 bags of material to do as such. And 6 bags resembles 4 weeks at least, if you really hit it hard. Yeah. So I was like, well, great, another month's work, just like that. And now I've got a much better idea. So it takes me about another year. And the other thing is also with the archive is that what I'm doing now when it comes to file naming and checking if the file is actually online or not, is the fact that I'm checking everything, and so the file names from the beginning were much more generic, so they need to be all renamed, and that's quite a few hundred files, maybe a few thousand files that I'm going to have to redo as such. But the beauty of it is that the search system works pretty well. It's within Google Drive, which everyone can have with a Gmail address, and I bought some extra space, and I thought I'd better put this archive in here, and I think I've got about 70, 80 gigs of material in there. Oh, wow. So it's a nice chunk to go through. It's going to keep people busy. And on top of that, I've got some other bits from other archives. And I last year I had microfiche rolls, like 16 millimeter and 13 millimeter. These are really long rolls of film, clear film, where back in the day when you were at the library, there used to be these little sheets that were the size of a postcard that you slide into the machine and with a magnifying glass. Right. So
you look with the square.
These are on a roll,
sort of viewer thing. You look in.
Yeah, exactly. So this is like on a roll, on a massive roll of 35 millimeter film, so just old school film.
Oh, wow.
In black and white. So you run that through the machine, and you basically just roll it up, and it goes click, 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 click. So I'd be getting back, this guy sends me like 6 PDFs because I had a bunch of rolls, and each PDF is like anything between 1,500 and 4,000 pages.
You're digitizing the microfiche. Oh, wow,
everything gets digitized. So I said, that needs to be digitized. And first I was going to hire a machine, because I said, well, I'd like to sell you one. I said, what the hell I'm going to do? I've got, X amount of rolls. It was altogether about 20 rolls of film, and that needs to be done. And that's it. Then I'm done with it. And it's such ancient technology. So, and I thought, okay. And then I found somebody
that could be an expensive,
who was doing it.
Like an expensive one-time investment, to do 20 rolls. And then what are you going to do with the machine? Right?
It was going to be $1,000 to do that. And then I found somebody And then I found somebody who did it for about 500 or 600, I think, something like that, about $600. And I was like, okay, so this guy's cheaper, and he does it for me, and I don't have to work with the kid, blah blah blah. So
boom.
So we did that, and DPUK basically pays for that. And these are Wagoner Cars papers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there's a ton of Ruby and a ton of Dallas Police, but it's a bit discouraging going through a 3,000-page file. You just go, mate, kill me now. You know. But so they're going to get released, and there's a few other bits because Malcolm did not just go to NARA. He also went to Tennessee, went to Miami, went to Georgetown in Washington, of course. And a few others.
And Dallas too, right?
Oh, God, yeah. That was probably one of the first ones he went to back in the day, the municipal archives.
Bart, let me ask you a question about the archives that are on Dealey Plaza UK website.
Yeah.
Of course, all this can be found under the research collection section at the Dealey Plaza UK website.
Yeah.
Actually, I went there yesterday because I was bored at work, and I was trying to peruse some shit.
And the page is off.
I couldn't get in.
Yeah,
it asked me for a password.
Yeah, because it's actually closed down until assassination weekend, because I'm working on a brand new page, and in there, instead of having 20 links to sections, you'll have one master link that takes you to everything. So you're basically going one directory up once you have that link, and you'll see all the folders. Okay. That's
so
why.
Just a
it's
temporary
only
thing. I didn't.
Yeah. Until another fortnight, and it will be open.
Well, do you want to give that website address out so in a fortnight everybody can go on and log on and crash your site trying to study.
That's DealeyPlazaUK.com.
Okay. Now, do you have to be a member?
Section.
Do you have to be a member of Dealey Plaza UK to get access to the research section?
No, anyone can visit this stuff. It's free. That's how it should be.
But we still want to encourage people to donate and become members of Dealey Plaza UK.
That's another thing. I'm going to put a PayPal button on there, on that page as well when it's open. I hope somebody can give us $10, $20. That'd be great. We put all the money that we are donated towards research, copying, scanning, the scanning app, the petrol, the fuel to go to pick stuff up. We've already got 2 projects lined up, thinking of doing as well. So this is not going to be a one-off. There's going to be more stuff. Some members have already said, like, how can I help? So, which is great. So when these other collections come up, we are going to make it more of a group effort. And get this stuff out there. That's the main thing. Get it. I mean, of course, I benefit from it because I used all the Dallas Police stuff and the federal files and all that for myself. The only other issue was that Malcolm's archive is incredibly disorganized. How do I explain this best? Okay. You have, say, 100 boxes filled with papers, all neatly organized, this, that, and the other, all by subject, blah, blah, blah. And then you get a bulldozer, and you basically grab all these boxes and you toss them up in the air, and they drop out, and all the folders open up, and the papers, this, that, and the other. And then you give it a good stir, and then you put it back into folders again. And that's what I had to deal with. And the Livingston archives were relatively easy to deal with. It was just one name. I just said, Berkeley, okay. And then I had a really fat folder, and it was like, okay, there are all the Berkeley files.
Yeah.
I didn't have a Richard Helms folder. No, I had maybe 20 folders where Richard Helms was mentioned, but then maybe there are 2 or 3 pages in there. And the next thing I know, I read about Marine Oswald. Or the next thing I know, I read about Inca or whatever, and I go, there's no mention of that, and it's all in these folders. And now I've got about half a bag left to do, and I call this the hell bag because at some point I come to folders. It is because the folders are basically filled with 1-page or 2-page documents. So every time you have to make a PDF. So you make it, upload it, title it, this, that, and the other, get a copy yourself, blah, blah, blah. So before you know it, you start to basically create between 50 and 100 PDFs on a day. So it's just full on. And That's quite labor intensive. And also the weirdest documents, because here's another thing, I don't know everything. So I glance at things and go, oh yeah, that's that, and I'm trying to be as detailed as possible. Which organization, committee, or enforcement agency, the person, the date, what's the what do you call it? The subject. So that's how things are named now, just to make it easy for everybody. And I found out that the OCR, that's the object character recognition, works really well, and helps you find documents. I came across lists just when I put the name in, and I just looked at these documents and I go, can't be in here, can't be, and yes.
Oh wow!
So so
I'm looking forward to that,
and it is in there. So that's the beauty of it. And this is also, again, this is a work in progress, because I have to rename the folders.
Yeah.
And at some point, when I'm done scanning, I'm going to use whatever is the best OCR possible on all the documents again, and then re-upload the entire enchilada, and then basically have an optimized database, like 100% optimized with everything. Everything will be found as much as possible. But I'm thinking of basically employing even more some algorithms. I need to look into it, but I've been toying with the idea of the handwriting as such, because especially FBI documents are really loaded with signatures, little scribbles, this, that, and the other.
Yep.
And, it would be nice to get intelligent technology at work, identifying who's who and who wrote what.
In the marginalia, the initials and whatnot.
Yeah,
oh wow, that's
and you've got root sheets of CIA, for instance, as well. The root sheets are basically the attached sheet with the document as such,
right.
Basically sent internally. Now there's plenty of them. Malcolm got plenty of them, and also them. See, you need someone like Malcolm to identify and decipher it. But what you really want is to have the computer do the job for you as such. And that means artificial intelligence. So hopefully at some point in a year or two, technology is perked up, and applying that technology is easier.
We need technology to catch up with Bart is what we need. Bart's got a need right now. Not 2 years from now.
Because that enables you to deeper research this. Now it takes someone like John Newman and Malcolm Blunt and maybe a handful of others to decipher all the abbreviations and the code and the annotations on these particular documents.
Hey, me and Rob got this, dude. The quality analysis, me and Rob got this. You just get them where we can read them, and we'll take care of the rest, buddy. The fucking big brains are on the job. Right, Rob?
That's a future idea, basically.
Yeah.
That's right.
The big brains are over here, baby.
So be looking out in about 2 weeks on Dealey Plaza UK for a bunch of new stuff coming from Bart and Mr. Malcolm Blunt.
And what people really should, if you really want to do something interesting, then you should look, and this is what Malcolm's done a lot, but it was part of all the other bits that he's been doing, is looking into what happened to the records. What records are destroyed? What records are basically being kept on the lock and key and so forth? You see, the picture that everyone has with regards to the whole Biden thing is nothing compared to what I told you already earlier about the not online files. Yeah. But on top of the recorrected files, reclassified files, and so forth, nobody speaks about that. Yeah, nobody knows about this as well.
Walt Brown told me a story about going to the National Archives like back in the day and getting some stuff, and then 8-10 years later getting a letter basically, hey, this is reclassified. We need to get that copy back. Like that actually happened to him with some documents.
That's really odd because
or we just want to let you know that it is now classified.
I mean, certain files that are reclassified, the previous copies that were sent out is like released as per blah blah blah. The archives.
I think he got a letter. He got a letter from somebody from the government.
I've got to tell Malcolm that.
Yeah,
I've got to know.
I remember him telling me that story, like them saying, "Hey, this thing you have is reclassified." And they, what was it, Rob? Like back in 2015, I guess. I'm thinking you and I talked about it on either my show or your show, where there was a one volume of a Bay of Pigs history, an internal thing, an internal CIA document that they reclassified a few years ago, just suddenly.
Yeah.
Weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I think just because people were still alive and somehow it got out. I mean, a lot of this stuff slips through the cracks. I mean, as long as you have human beings classifying and reinserting these files back into the archives, it might end up in the wrong place sometimes, and somebody might stumble across it.
Oh my God! You know what? You can write a book just about the files. You can write a book about the files that have all been destroyed. And Malcolm's got a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of documents that basically list, like, oh, this file destroyed, that file destroyed. I mean, yesterday he showed me a document, and I was just like, oh my God, how can that be destroyed still? And so quick within 10 years after the deed, it was destroyed, and so forth. And there should have just been a moratorium on anything like that. And then, of course, you've got the NBR bit. You told me about that. I read about it before. Not believed relevant.
Yes.
And you suspect basically the agency hiding documents in that NBR moniker as such, under that moniker.
Oh, of course.
And they use every trick in the book and then some. So, you're talking about a formidable enemy.
Yeah, and they've got them all anyway. I mean, it's
a lot of people don't know that Building 7 was filled to the brim with Library of Congress records.
Really?
And the Library of Congress has got copies of every record on the JFK assassination. Well, we know what happened to Building 7. And it's not just JFK, it's just everything. There's just records, collections, left, right, and center. And the whole thing went up in smoke. Gone. Yeah. And Malcolm told me that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
No, I told that to Larry Schnapp as well, and he was like, what? And I was like, no, Malcolm told me this. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. So they're all gone, all those copies.
So they were in Building 7?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well.
Now, there were a lot of agencies in Building 7 as well. If you just Google and just check what companies were in Building 7, you're going, what? Really? Yeah. Yeah. Now, Malcolm has really educated me. And like I said, it took me 2 years to actually get a grasp of his archive. And the thing is also, Malcolm collected a lot of stuff which he actually never really researched. The Secret Service, I mean, the amount of files Malcolm got on the Secret Service. So I'm going to do an article with William Law on the limousine, because William had some really good video footage of, I hope I pronounce this right, Joe Powella. He did a DPUK talk about a month ago, and he had a video. And this guy was a Secret Service agent who was present in the White House garage where the limousine arrived as such. And yes, he speaks about the window, and he speaks about, the state of the limousine and who did what, this, that, and the other. And then I found all these documents from Malcolm. There's even a schedule of agents on duty and on call. And there's Harry Livingston had a load of photos from the windshield, about 8 or 10 photos. And then when William started talking about it, I said, I'll tell you what, we can do a really good, hefty story for whatever magazine. And we can... it's going to be a really good article because of the material that we have with the interview. The interview was originally 2 hours. I edited it down to 90, and that's just great. The archive is feeding me at least a dozen large articles to work with. Minox is one of them. Oswald's fingerprints is another, but Oswald's fingerprints I only stick to what the DPD did, because there's also the New Orleans bit, the U.S. Marines bit. And I'm just talking about when I look at the fingerprints themselves, it's just it's nothing short of a joke, the way these are passed around and maintained as such in the archives and the feds and the Secret Service and the copies they have. That's another thing, the copies I found. I cannot reconcile the copies at all with the DPD and what the Secret Service and the FBI have, etc., etc. So that's going to be a massive article. I based article on the rally call on Malcolm's material. The rally call is dead in the water. I found a bloody Will Fritz document this week that I just added on as well, the article. And basically Fritz said, never happened. So I was like, well, if Will Fritz says so, it must be true. So, yeah. So, so I was like, okay, cool. And the story of these three women, just absolutely it's just crisscross, and there's nothing where you can say, well, they're right on all three are right on one point. It's just they're contradicting each other left, right, and center. And I can't believe actually the HSCA bought any of it, and the ARB was entertaining it as something serious as well. And the whole thing is just absolutely dead in the water.
There were those at the head of the HSCA that weren't really interested in finding, an alternative truth to the Warren report, as they were just getting through the process and getting the report issued and being done with it. That's what Eddie Lopez says that Blakey used to tell him, hey, we're here to write a report. Hey, look. We're here to write a report. He used to just,
Yeah, I mean, I agree to that because a lot of it wasn't really investigated as such.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they got statements. I mean, if you look at the DPD statements, they're more or less basically given free rein what to answer. And, there's no critical questions as such. You know what? Here's the thing. And I don't know why a lot of people don't understand this, or just don't get it. But what it is that Prayer Man, or even investigating the DPD, if a lot of the energy and the forces and the attention was actually put towards the Dallas investigation as such, then it could have been nipped in the bud. And I'm basically even extremer than that, because to me, Prayer Man is cutting off the head of the snake. If you solve that part, like I said, the whole thing just tumbles. It just crashes, like buildings. Yeah. But so everything else is mute. It's just people can say, like, you see, so now we can investigate that. So that will have more impact on the truth and so forth. Something that was disowned before that all of a sudden can become incredibly valuable as such. And I never understood where people go to such a character like John Hurt. Everybody put John Hurt in a position that he was like huge, and he made this phone call, and he had a connection to intelligence, and he left the same theater, the area, Japan and so forth, years before Oswald actually showed up there. 5 or 6 years at least, there was difference.
Yeah.
Before Oswald was there. And I'm like, well, what does this mean? Because there's 6 years difference in that, and all of a sudden, for some reason, for some stupid, inane reason, there's a connection. Yeah, there's a connection that he was there 6 years before Oswald was there, and that's that. And if for some reason, that's been made incredibly important.
And and 6 years before that, he ate breakfast in the same diner that Alan Dulles once ate breakfast in. Dulles is the mastermind. Same shit, dude.
Yeah.
Same shit.
No, it's funny, but sadly true.
Sadly true.
That's another thing of Malcolm's archive. It's helped me to kill off certain things, and the rally call is the best example. Definitely, all the documentation that was around there, and any layman who just looks through it and just goes, "Well, this doesn't work at all. It doesn't reconcile."
So, do you think the chick there, the operator lady, was
Alvita
just
Trion and Sharon Kovac?
You think they just made it up?
I think it's miscommunication, and also part of the writing down of the recollection as such.
Maybe it was somebody else.
It wasn't done in Texas. It was done after they'd moved. And there was just somebody, I think it was one of the sheriffs that they knew, they took something out, it got written up. Then the HSCA came and they took statements, and this is where it really went wrong.
Yeah.
And it just didn't reconcile at all. There's nothing between these three. I put an Excel spreadsheet together because I was like, nah, hold on a minute. And then you look at the spreadsheet and they give a different explanation for everything. Who was there? Who took the call? Who took the note? And the note is really bad as well. It's like somebody who basically went over it with his pen like 3 or 4 times on a really faded photocopy. It's terrible. It's almost as bad as the glazed letters. That's another oh, mate.
The which?
Stop it. Elsie Glaze about Bill Shelley, CIA, this, that, and the other. Oh God, stop it. It's almost as bad as gas mask man in Algin 6. Another stupid thing that people come up
he's
with.
absolutely. Now, the worst was I saw a guy online that had, and I could tell you what his name was, but I don't even want to go there. But and it was a red and yellow and black blob, right? And it had 2 arrows, and it said, this is clearly, it was literally just like 3 blobs. They were just fucking blobs. And this guy was like, this is clearly George H.W. Bush and Nestor Esquiero, the Cuban exile, right here. And I'm going, I see a block of Swiss cheese with tomato sauce on it. That's all the fuck I see, But I think this person eventually went away. But, yeah, I get that. I know what you're saying. The crap that passes for research, guys, sometimes.
Speaking of which, Doug, I think we have some breaking news in the Kennedy assassination, do we?
Well, I was going to say, as William Kelly would say about our podcast, the crap that passes for research.
If only he listened.
Nah, he'll never listen. Bart, he'll never listen, will he?
Nah.
Did we lose Bart?
No, you did, but I'm back in.
Oh, there he is. You know what, guys? We do actually have some breaking news. Another breaking news story, Rob. You're right. On the heels, guys, of... Let me get back to my page here. The revelations of Lauren Hall and this Mannlicher Carcano rifle that he gave his stepsons to hide right after the assassination. It was probably late December, early January that he gave this rifle to his stepson to hide. And, of course, that came out a few weeks ago. And now we have another, this time a son of a guy who was definitely involved in all this stuff, definitely connected. And I'll explain to you guys how he's connected to these people that we study. It's a Miami Herald article by Nora Gamez Torres. And don't laugh, Rob. Don't laugh. Gamez, that's what it says. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's Gamez. Is that right? Gamez?
Nothing wrong with that.
Gamez or Gamez or...
Works for me.
Jamez or, I figured Rob would giggle at that. Yeah. There you go.
Jamez.
The G sort of pronounced as a J, isn't it?
Yamez?
Or an H.
Nora?
Or a silent T.
Nora Yamez Torres is her name. She wrote the story. Cuban exile told sons he trained Oswald, JFK's accused assassin, at a secret CIA camp. First thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to give a little tip of the hat to Ms. Torres because she included the word accused in her headline. Normally for a mainstream media story about the Kennedy assassination, they won't make that caveat. It'll just say Oswald, JFK's assassin. You know what I mean? So kudos to her. Absolutely. Anyway, here's the story.
Makes sense.
Almost 40 years after his death following a bar brawl in Key Biscayne, Ricardo Morales, known as Monkey, contract CIA worker, anti-Castro militant, counterintelligence chief for Venezuela, FBI informant and narcotics dealer returned to the spotlight Thursday morning when one of his sons made a startling claim on Spanish language radio. Morales, a sniper instructor in the early 60s in secret camps where Cuban exiles and others trained to invade Cuba, realized in the hours after President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas that the accused killer, Lee Harvey Oswald, had been one of his trainees. Now, guys, we do have a lot of, but we have stories, fables, myths, allegations that Oswald was present at one or two of these camps in Florida and in Louisiana. It says here, Morales also told his two sons. Now, this is interesting to me, guys. Listen to this. Morales also told his two sons that 2 days before the assassination, his CIA handler told him and his, quote, cleanup team to go to Dallas for a mission. But after the tragic events, they were ordered to go back to Miami without learning what the mission was about. Bart is apparently on his CB radio going Breaker 19 over there. I don't know what all that is. You guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where? Rob, you all right over there?
I'm here, brother.
Okay. Yeah, that was Rob making that noise. Okay, here we go.
I've got a file on Ricardo Morales.
Oh man, I've got a couple. I've got a couple of documents here. I want to read a little bit from for you guys too.
Have you got this file that is hand notes, and these are from 68 and 69?
I do not know. I don't think I've got any. I don't think I've got any handwritten stuff here with us for today. I got a couple of interesting documents I got from David Boylan. I wanted to share with you guys about him.
All right, go for it.
It says the claim made by Ricardo Morales Jr. during a show on Miami's Actualidad Radio adds to one of the long-held theories about the JFK assassination, that Cuban exiles working for the CIA had been involved. But the claims also point the finger at CIA, which some observers believe could help explain why President Joe Biden backed off last week on declassifying the remaining documents. Morales' son said the last time his father took him and his brother to shooting practice in the Everglades a year before dying in 1982, he told them he felt his end was near because he had revealed too much information of his work for the CIA to Venezuelan journalists, and he was writing a memoir. So he encouraged his sons to ask him questions about his life.
Okay. Well, I'll just send you an email.
Okay, cool. Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I'm getting some kind of feedback from somewhere. Can you hear that?
It's probably from me because I had to unplug my headphones and
that's what it is. Yeah, I can hear myself in the background there.
I'm sorry about that. I just need to collect some power on this thing.
Collect some power. All right, we will continue. He says, where we at? When my old man was training in a CIA camp, he did tell me where he was helping to train snipers. He did not tell me where. Other Cubans, Latin Americans, and there were a few Americans. When he saw the photo of Lee Oswald, he realized this was the same character he had seen on the CIA training field. But later, when my father sees him, he realizes he is the same person. His father said he didn't believe Oswald killed Kennedy, quote, because he had witnessed him shooting at a training camp. And he said there is no way that the guy could shoot that well. I want to ask you guys about this concept of the cleaning crew. When he says cleaning crew, I wonder what he means by that. Obviously not the hit team.
Right. Oh, like people that take the broken down weapon and walk into a different direction. That's like that cleaning crew.
Well, he said that they were sent to Dallas, and then they were told to stand by, and then told to stand down. Like they didn't even know what the mission was about. Like, why were they there? When I'm thinking cleanup crew, is it like, say it goes bad and somebody's got to shoot a shooter or clean up a witness? You know, maybe somebody's got to take out a witness that might have seen something. Or, I don't know. In this context, cleanup crew sounds kind of nefarious to me. Not like logistical support. You know what I mean?
Like if shit starts going sideways, or it could be to clean up the hit crew if they maybe had gotten caught getting away.
Right. Yeah.
To shut them up. Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, you get a member of the tactical team get cold feet and cowboy it. Well, somebody's got to take him out. You know, clean up the mess.
Yeah, or somebody on the grassy knoll would have gotten arrested, and maybe put a bullet in his head before they get out of the parking lot, type thing.
Yeah, or if say there was a witness that just happened to wander into, let's say the 5th floor where they had somebody also firing or something like that, or somebody wander up to the grassy knoll as they're pulling the trigger. Somebody's got to get rid of that witness while the shooters get gone. You know, that sort of cleanup crew. Yeah.
Maybe the cleanup crew moved the boxes around for the DPD as a courtesy.
Maybe. But, a few days after the story was published, guys, Jefferson Morley published, he did a story on Morales and linked to his 130-page CIA file, which is still heavily redacted. And, I mean, it's redacted to a ridiculous degree. When I say that, I mean 12 to 14 pages at a time, more than once, still withheld. And it is one of the records, according to Mr. Morley, of the one of the files postponed until next year. But I want to read a little bit what it says here. Memorandum for the record, Chief Counterintelligence. And this is about Morales, the subject, who is the subject of 201-285-923. Possesses operational approval for the use by Special Operations Division, or is that what that means? SOD, Special Operations Division, for paramilitary activities under Project WI Pegasus. It is also requested that the existing operational approval be amended to include use under Project WI Thrush. Now, WI Pegasus, according to Mary Farrell, was the CIA project / operation in the Congo in the 1960s. Rip Robertson took those guys over there. And these guys were the A-team of the fucking A-team of CIA and U.S. military trained, Cuban exile paramilitary commandos. These were those guys that they signed up, they ran up through basic training, they immediately got an officer's commission, then they immediately went through U.S. Army Ranger School, then they immediately went through U.S. Navy SEAL School, and then they were turned loose on the
Expendables.
Yeah. I mean, the badass of the badasses. And this Ricardo Monkey Morales, whose cryptonym was AM Desk 1, was one of these commandos. We've talked about that photograph of the JM Wave commandos in the Congo taken on that tarmac on November 22nd of 1964. Rip Robertson is holding a black umbrella. They have champagne and whatnot. Ricardo Monkey Morales is in that photograph.
Nice.
One of those guys.
Beautiful.
This is the Congo mission, like I said, that was led by Rip Robertson. Carlos Hernandez was on this mission as well. David Boylan likes Carlos Hernandez, this particular guy, to be the quote-unquote Carlos who was with Oswald at Robert McCowan's trying to buy rifles earlier in 1963. Boylan thinks that guy is a good connect for that cat traveling around with Oswald at that time. I want to read a little bit about this Morales, who says he trained Oswald as a sniper this is more from Mr. Morley's website. When Morales's anti-Castro compatriots bombed a Polish ship and other communist targets in 1968, his fingerprints were found at one of the bombing scenes. The FBI received testimony that the explosives came from the CIA. Morales then became a witness for U.S. prosecutors. He wore a wire for the FBI while meeting with other Cuban suspects in the case. In a 1972 memo, the chief of the agency's Western Hemisphere division said the FBI considered him honest and objective as an informant. Morales' career as a terrorist, drug trafficker, and informant grew even more complex, as detailed in a mind-bending and paywalled Harper's Magazine cover story in January of '82. Morales was shot to death in a Miami bar after an argument in December of '82. And he goes on to say President Biden gave the CIA and other federal agencies until December 15th to release JFK files, with a proviso that they can delay sensitive material relating to national security, military intelligence, and foreign policy until December 15th of 2022. And Morales's file, like I said, guys, is one of these. So it's interesting to me, guys, and I do not discount that this guy could have known something. We know the circles he ran in. I mean, this bunch that went to the Congo, real quick. David Boylan found these fascinating documents, and we call them the Black Nine documents, right? The AM World anti-Castro operation, AM World thing, didn't kick off till 1964 in April. But the first day of December, I think it was December 1st or December 2nd of 1963, just a week, less than 2 weeks after the assassination, a bunch of these guys, this same tactical crew, were exfiltrated black from the United States inside wooden crates in the hull of a ship out of Baltimore Harbor. And they were taken to Guatemala, and then they ended up in the Congo. But they were snuck out. Like I said, they put them in crates in the hull of a ship. They changed crews in North Carolina, I think. And then they could come out of the crates in a ship called the Joanne. Now, me and David Boylan researched this ship, the Joanne, and we found it. The only problem is it officially burned and sank in 1961 off of Grand Cayman Island. But the CIA had it. But this is the same crew, the same bunch that ends up going over there for this very specialized Congo operation. And about half of this crew ends up, it turns out, they were trained by Gene Wheaton. By Carl Jenkins, the CIA paramilitary trainer that Gene Wheaton says was involved in the assassination. So, This is an interesting story with more to come, I'm sure, and I hope, by researchers. Maybe something there. He may have actually seen Oswald. So I wanted to get that out there to everybody. It seems that when Bill Simpich told me that we needed to be talking to the sons and daughters and cousins and family of these people that are passing away, that's a good point.
He said that last week. Yeah.
So because we got, Lauren Hall stepsons and now the son of Monkey Morales coming forward with things that may be credible. So there you go.
Nice.
That is all I had for that, guys. I do have a little bit of comic relief for you fellas for this episode.
Well, good.
If you are in the mood.
Go on, bring it on.
Bring it on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a segment that we like to call
That's Dumb Shit.
That's Dumb Shit. Right here. On Quick Hits. Okay, guys, you would not believe what I learned this week about the Kennedys. You wouldn't believe it. Ask me. Go ahead.
Lay it on
Ask
us,
me.
sir.
Ask me. I learned...
The possibilities are endless.
I learned some hard truth about the Kennedy family and their bloodline that I did not previously know. Would you guys like to hear it? It's going to blow your mind. Blow your mind. Okay, here we go.
General Patton is the grandson of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
All right. General Patton had a brother, which was Benito Mussolini as well, who came. So General Patton was the son of William Wallace Lincoln. Benito Mussolini was the son of Thomas Tad Lincoln. All right. Joseph Kennedy, the older brother of John F. Kennedy, presumed dead in World War II, was not dead. He went into hiding for protection. He had children. Joseph Kennedy begat General Michael Flynn, who happens to be first cousins to John and his siblings as well. Trump is the biological son of General Patton, which makes him first cousins to John and the Kennedys as well.
Man,
that's too much to ponder.
Yeah. And John didn't die. He's really cute and still alive, friends with Trump, his cousin. I think I got all that straight. Okay, cool.
Rob,
makes sense now. Makes perfect sense now.
From the Dallas Morning News, my friend, QAnon supporters gather in downtown in Dealey Plaza expecting JFK Jr. to reappear. I would like to share a little bit of this with you, gentlemen, if I may. Scores, dude, and when they say scores, it was like 1,200 fucking people. Scores of QAnon believers.
It's more than shows up on the 22nd of November.
More that shows up.
Yeah.
But what, 3 times, 5 times more?
Easily.
Damn. Scores of QAnon believers gathered Tuesday afternoon in downtown Dallas in hopes that John F. Kennedy Jr. would appear, heralding the reinstatement of Donald Trump as president. The supporters first gathered Monday night in downtown Dallas. At about 1 p.m. Tuesday, there were several hundred people near Dealey Plaza, where President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Kennedy's son died in a plane crash in 1990 at age 38, but these supporters of the QAnon conspiracy theory believe that he has spent the last 22 years in hiding. They think John F. Kennedy Jr. will reappear at the plaza before midnight. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Or be turned into a pumpkin. Yeah.
Thoughts, Rob?
I don't really have any thoughts on this other than it would be amazing and freaking awesome if true. It likely is not.
It likely is not.
Yeah.
It is likely.
That's a good theory. It's a damn good theory.
Boy. Now, one Jared Holt, a very diligent researcher who tracks and researches domestic extremism, told the Dallas Morning News that he was absolutely shocked at how many people showed up at this douchebag convention, this gathering in Dallas. Quote, if they're willing to show up to the grassy knoll thinking JFK Jr. is coming back, it scares me to think of what happens when they get real power. After a few hours of standing on the grassy knoll, waving at passing cars and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance over and over, the crowd retreated from heavy rains. Some said they expected a revelation Tuesday night at the Rolling Stones concert in Dallas. Others vowed to return at midnight to the grassy knoll where they believe JFK Jr. will appear. Mickey Larson Olsen, who wore a QAnon-themed Captain America costume Tuesday, says she not only believes JFK Jr. is alive, she also believes that his father was never assassinated and that the 104-year-old former president will appear to help usher in a Trump JFK Jr. administration.
This shit is bananas.
Where do you find these idiots?
Well, we find them in America, Bart, is where we find them.
That's a good segment for That's Horse Shit.
Yeah, that's... Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Rob and I like to say...
Fuck that shit. That's dumb shit.
Okay. That's dumb shit. Emails, Rob. Do we have emails, sir?
We do. It's time for Bart's favorite segment of the show.
Yeah,
Bart's
definitely.
favorite segment. Here we go.
Oh, yes, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Wait.
Emails. Rob, sir, you have the helm, my friend.
All right. Let me reach down into my bag here and feel around a little bit.
Rob's got to feel his sack just for you. Just for you. He's feeling
right.
his sack.
It's bulging today, fellas. It's bulging, so hold tight. All right. First one up from Ann Chapman, our old friend Ann. She says, "Hi, guys. I have a question which I hope will help keep Rob's sack bulging." God damn, she's a clairvoyant.
She seems to be a little preoccupied with your sack, Rob.
I know. Well, as we'll see, she's preoccupied with a piece of your anatomy as well, too, Doug. Just hang on a second.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
She says, "You've kindly told us before."
Oh, she's not one of those toe suckers, because I'm not into that.
She says, "You've kindly told us before that a bullet fired from the Mannlicher Carcano, or indeed any other firearm in history, and hitting anything thicker than a sheet of tissue paper would be more deformed than CE 399 was, especially at the head. I therefore have a question about the injuries to Governor Connally. Now, as you know, John Connally was known as Big John. A lot of people mistakenly believe this was because he was a big wheel in Texas politics and or because he was tall. But the truth is he got that name after fellow servicemen saw him in the showers when he was in the Navy in World War II. So, if CE 399 did pass through Kennedy and Connally, through all those layers of clothing, skin, bone, etc., and finally impacted Connally's, quote, wedding sausage, which would have had the more impressive mushroom head, the governor or CE 399?
I
And come to that,
absolutely no opinion on that whatsoever. None.
And come to that, would either of them rival Doug's, which I understand has been likened to the results of those nuclear weapons tests in the Pacific in the 1950s? Love, Ann.
What's that? Everything shriveled up and dead in its fucking aftermath? That's pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
I think she was referring to that giant mushroom cloud.
Yeah, I'm hung like a mosquito. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Yeah, sorry, Ann. All right. Wow. Next up, this one is from Gary Miller. He says, "Hi, guys. First off, I'm so glad I found your podcast. You guys sound like washed up, fat, white suburban dads, just like me. LOL." Well, boy, you hit that right on the head.
What's this guy's name?
Gary Miller.
Hey, go fuck yourself, Gary Miller. Now, go ahead, Rob.
He says, "I've always had an interest in the JFK shooting, but never really dove in. That is until COVID hit. They took sports away from me. So long story short, while I was listening to an audiobook entitled Chaos by Tom O'Neill, his mentioning of Jack Ruby and Jolly West perked my interest again in the assassination, and since then it's been in the rabbit hole I go. So many tunnels you go into and so many landmines to avoid. The whole thing is simply fascinating. Since the beginning of COVID, I've devoured, I'd say, around 60 books on the subject, and I know I still hardly know all there is to know. But my knowledge and obsession has left me with nobody to talk to about it anymore. So thanks again for the podcast, and now I can bother you guys with all my dumb questions. Just wanted to say that before I head into a few questions." He says, "So I started listening to one of your most recent podcasts, and when I finished, I decided to head over to your first one. I'm about 5 episodes in, and I'm just wondering, what's your beef with Talbot? Is it over the Harvey on a plane to Dallas story? I really don't think, even if you prove that Harvey was on a plane to Dallas in November of '63, that it proves anything. Harvey was an international man of mystery and intrigue. He could have been in Dallas for anything. Sure, it raises eyebrows, but it's not a smoking gun of anything. There are far better reasons to think he was involved than that. I like the stuff I've read by Talbot, and I thought his stuff checked out pretty clean. Am I wrong about him, Doug?
I agree 100% that you know the airplane thing, the flight on the road to Dallas, which he was not on because it's just provably false. It doesn't prove anything. The problem that I had with it was the one thing that the author and those who promoted that book hung that book's hat on. That was the big revelation about the book.
Great.
Well, you know, it turns out to be a third-hand story of something that's just simply impossible. There was not a commercial airliner in service in 1963 capable of flying from Rome to Dallas. Period. And beyond that, the only international flight in and out of Dallas was Mexico City. So that's my problem with it. That basically the book was Alan Dulles was the mastermind, and here's why. Harvey in an airplane flight. And I don't subscribe to the Alan Dulles as mastermind, grand puppet master fucking thing either. I think it's an overbloviated conspiratorial, theoretical, all-inclusive fucking blob, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my problem with, and I really don't have a problem with David Talbot. I'm just saying, hey, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. You know, that's it.
Right. He says, why do you guys think Dean Rusk escaped so much scrutiny? He was Secretary of State for the majority of Vietnam and has a history with many other suspects. I'm halfway through a bio on him, and he's a no-nonsense cold warrior, hawk all the way. Just wondering what you guys think of him. He was buddies with Mitch Warbell, too.
Yeah, Mitch, you know, I just recently, speaking of Mitch Warbell, I went to Rex Bradford's article on the documents, the files that are still withheld. There's one in there that says ONI charge card, Mitchell Warbell III. So, are you telling me that Mitchell Warbell III had a fucking ONI issued credit card? And
yeah, that's funny.
That's very funny. Yeah. Yeah, but as far as Rusk goes, I'll defer to you guys. Rob, Bart.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know shit about Dean Rusk, to be honest with you.
That's why I defer to you guys.
But as Secretary of State, it's again...
I've got a few documents, but I haven't really paid attention to him.
Well, there you go. We'll have to get back with you on that there. Kind emailer. We'll have to go study Dean Rusk and get back.
Yeah, he goes on to say, man, I have a shitload of questions for you guys, actually, but for now, I'll just keep listening to this podcast and get back to the 3 books I bought the other day. I do have something I want to share with you, and I've included in an attachment. One of those things I wanted to do once I determined once and for all that there is 0.0000001% that Oswald did it, was to read old newspapers from the time JFK gave his speech at American University to when he got blasted. I wanted to get a little bit of feel of the political climate of the time, thought it might help. I came across 2 things in Las Vegas Review Journal from the evening edition of November the 22nd, 1963 issue. I know in the rush to get scoop, errors are made, but I was wondering if you've ever heard of the suspect that was mentioned, and if you heard the initial reports of a .25 caliber Japanese rifle being used.
No, that's news to me.
No idea.
Yeah, I have the articles here. It says this. Lieutenant Kaminsky of the Secret Service said the weapon used to kill President Kennedy appears to have been a high-powered Army Japanese rifle of about .25 caliber, and the rifle had a scope on it. The entire building where the sniper was located was evacuated. People were working in the building at the time of the shooting. Dallas Inspector Sawyer said police found the remains of fried chicken and paper on the 5th floor. Apparently the person had been there quite a while, After the fatal shots were fired at Kennedy, the stricken president's Secret Service drivers raced away from the scene at top speed, heading for the nearest hospital and trying to get the presidential party out of range of further gunfire. So, and then there was also this about the Dallas police jail suspect. And this is from Fort Worth, Texas, for some reason. It says, soon after President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, a white man in his mid-20s was arrested Friday in the Riverside section of Fort Worth in the shooting of a Dallas policeman. The man, who has black curly hair and who wore a red shirt, denied that he was connected with the president or with the assassination of the president. Now, this is, of course, referring to Donald Wayne House, who was arrested in Fort Worth right after the assassination. But as far as the Japanese high-powered rifle is concerned, I think the Secret Service agent was grossly misinformed. I don't think they had immediate access to the rifle. You know, the Dallas police took ownership of that pretty much right away, and you know, was sent to the FBI after that. And they might have just gotten their story wrong. Like you said, it's error. You know, to get the first scoop, they might have just saw the Japanese scope on it and assumed that it was a Japanese rifle. But yeah, definitely not a 25 caliber.
Very good point.
That's my thoughts on it, fellas. A lot of errors were made. You know, like I said, the fifth floor, they found a sack of chicken bones. Is actually the sixth floor. But as Bart can attest to, you know, many errors were made on some of these early newspaper reports.
Oh, yeah.
You know, coming from just even, you know, the shit still goes on today, trying to be the first to get the scoop. And, you know, you get some facts wrong. All right, next one up is from QJ Scorzani, Doug's favorite emailer.
Oh, well, real quick before we read this, what's guaranteed to be a train wreck, I want to go back to the first email, the Gary Miller. Yeah. Yes. For the record, I weigh 171 pounds, and I'm in my fucking prime. Okay, now you may read the other one.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Doug.
God damn it.
All right, from QJ Scorzani.
I think that guy already should get 10 points just for writing as QJ Scorzani.
He says
these are usually pretty good. Yeah.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald have a rectangular shaped dick? If so, is that how JVB got her letterbox shaped mouth? Still, she did look good in her swimsuit in 1963, doing those splits on the chairs.
You need to get out more, QJ. Immediately, I can tell you that. Oh, boy.
That's some badass shit there.
Good Lord.
Man.
All right. Thanks, QJ. On we go to Jeffrey Shanks. Hi, Rob and Doug. I'm a new listener to all three of your podcasts, having just discovered them after a post by Larry Hancock on the Ed Forum a few months ago. Your shows and your approach are absolutely a breath of fresh air that this area of interest badly needed. I've been studying the assassination since I was a teenager in the 80s, reading most of the major books, following and lurking on various groups in the forums in the 90s and 2000s, and generally trying to stay abreast of new developments in the field over the years. I've always shied away from becoming an active participant, mostly because of the attitude and, quite frankly, lack of a true, scholarly approach to the subject on the part of conspiracy proponents, despite being one of those proponents myself. On your last episode, your discussion of Jim DiEugenio's review of John Newman's book beautifully illustrated the problem with the JFK research community. The field is plagued with people who become wedded to their own pet hypothesis, who then cherry pick evidence to support their hypothesis, generally CIA primacy or a variant, rather than letting the evidence lead them to an appropriate conclusion. There are, however, a handful of true scholars who utilize a rigorous historic approach to the topic and who I believe are beginning to paint as clear a picture of what happened in '63 as we are likely to ever get.
I agree, and I
People
try to surround myself with those kind of people instead of the the other kind. For sure.
People
I
like
agree with you.
Newman, Hancock, Simpich, Morley, Kamp, and a few others. Hey, Bart,
Me?
you got mentioned. Yeah.
What am I doing? Really?
You're fucking amazing, dude.
Fucking amazing.
The work of whom your podcasts are doing an amazing job of discussing, dissecting, and promoting. For that, I want to thank you profusely. On a more personal level, binging your shows over the last couple months has encouraged me to become more actively involved in the conversation publicly. For the first time, I think there may be an opportunity to rescue the field from the hands of conspiracy buffs pushing their pet theories and the con artists slinging their bullshit. For the first time, I think we may be seeing the beginnings of a true academically oriented discourse community beginning to develop, just as this major new corpus of documents is becoming available for researchers. And it's no stretch to say that you guys are providing one of the main platforms for that discourse. Keep up the great work, and next time I write, I promise I'll have a real question or comment and not just a rambling manifesto. All the best, Jeff Shanks.
Thank you very much.
Can you repeat that name again?
Jeff
Can you
Shanks.
repeat that name? John Shanks?
Jeff.
I don't know if that's a real name, but John, listen to me.
Jeff
What you're
Shanks.
saying?
Jeff.
Oh, Jeff.
Jeff.
Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, he's a real person. I've seen him. I've seen
what-
him in a form or two. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
And thank you, Jeff.
I'm just going to say that what you say was said 30 years ago as well. It's the same thing. Here is what you got to understand. And this is what a lot of people don't like to hear. So I'm going to say it anyway. In the 90s, many documents were released already. Only very few actually bothered to go out there and get the stuff. That's the thing. My first experience was that I found all these documents, and friends of mine found documents and basically got them from the archives, and they had already been available for 20 years, and nobody had done anything about it as such. And this is also the story I have with Malcolm. Malcolm goes there and he sees people coming and basically buggering off within 2 days. You know, Malcolm sits there for months, and what we've done is only a small bit. You know, I've done 150,000 pages. Let's say it's going to be 200,000 pages at the end of the whole trip. I haven't done that. What's 200,000 pages out of 7 million? It's peanuts. That's the problem. There's too much material and too few people that are actually doing the work. And the ones that are actually dying and without getting actual real answers as such, because there's so much material to go through. And then think about the material that's already been held back,
yeah.
which is probably the same amount or maybe treble the amount they got rid of. All the real juice files, all the operations, all the stings, all the shadowing and little this, that, and the other, etc., etc.
Our grandkids will be reading this stuff anew, you know?
Yeah,
By the time anybody gets around to most of it.
Some stupid story basically fed, but yeah. But I mean, I find the words from you very encouraging, Jeff, but at the same time, I'm also thinking, like, meh, you know, so. But anyway.
Thank you so much for that very kind email, Mr. Jeff. Very appreciated.
We all know
sir.
what comes around goes around in this whole assassination thing. So, all right, next up from Chris O'Brien in Scotland, over by you there, Bart.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Hi guys. According to Skip Hall, there were two people on the grassy knoll during the assassination, one to do the shooting and the other to make sure it happened. Now, according to retired NYPD detective Jim Rothstein, one of the detectives who arrested Frank Sturgis when Sturgis went to kill Marita Lorenz in New York, Sturgis spoke about the assassination while in custody. Sturgis apparently told Rothstein that there were two shooters on the knoll and that he was one of them and the other was E. Howard Hunt, although Sturgis didn't admit to firing the headshot. What Sturgis said to Rothstein several years after the assassination fits with what Skip Hall told his stepson after Hall handed him the Carcano rifle to hide. Are you guys aware, or as you guys are aware, Sturgis and Hunt knew each other. They were both involved in Watergate. I know Sturgis claimed he was in Miami during the assassination, but according to his nephew, he disappeared for several hours that day. Sturgis was a pilot, had access to a plane, and could easily have flown to Dallas and returned in the afternoon. So what are your thoughts about this? Was it maybe Sturgis and Hunt behind the fence that day? Or was it Hall and Sturgis, or Hall and Hunt? What Skip Hall said and what Sturgis said fits together neatly. Too neatly? Keep up the good work, guys. Best wishes, Chris O'Brien from Scotland.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, in Scotland, for the email. Yeah, you know, I think about what L.J. Delsa said about Lawrence Howard. He said, nah, I don't like Sturgis for the... Sturgis talked too much. He wasn't the type. Howard, yeah, for sure. But, you know, you got the Marita Lorenz story about that caravan of guys who went to Dallas with some guns. So, wow. Hunt, I don't see in Dallas at all. Sturgis, yeah. I think there's a 50-50 shot Sturgis was there. As far as the shooters go, I don't know. My gut tells me to defer to Delsa, L.J. Delsa, with that. But, you know, what do I know, Chris? I'm still trying to figure it all out, too, you know. Good question, though, for sure.
All right. Next up, we have an email from Fenner Sedgebeer, a self-proclaimed National Archives employee.
What was that name again?
Fenner Sedgebeer.
Okay.
He says, gentlemen, as you know, down here at the National Archives, we are working through the outstanding files related to the JFK assassination with a view to release. Unfortunately, we are having some trouble identifying the content of one secret recording made by the FBI. We know that the recording is of Colonel Fletcher Prouty and others. The problem is the accompanying documentation has been lost, and so the subject of the conversation is unclear. We feel there are two possibilities. Either, one, Colonel Prouty talking with his wife before his ARRB testimony and asking if she thinks it would be a good idea if he were to tell the board that he would have had a tank parked on every single manhole cover in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. Were he in charge of security?
That's priceless.
Or even better, I had arranged for a tank to be on every, but they told me to take them back.
And then he says, or the recording is of a quiet dinner at the colonel's home with his wife and General Krulak. It seems it may record their responses when the colonel asked him if they would be interested in a threesome. As experts in the assassination and in various sexual shenanigans and malarkey, we would welcome your analysis. Thank you, Fenner Sedgebeer, Special Agent in the National Archives. He accompanied an MP3.
Fucked up listeners, man. That's for sure.
They, man, true words, Bart. Yeah. That was, I should have known by the name. Yeah, that was going to be. But that was actually pretty good. That's pretty good. I told them I'd park a Sherman tank on every manhole cover, but they told me to leave them back.
All right, he accompanied an MP3 of part of this conversation. Let me play it for you now. Hopefully it will.
Did you pre-screen this, Rob?
Before? I did not.
Oh, Rob, we're supposed to do that. Pre-screen.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Nothing there.
I'll paraphrase for you. It's obviously some audio captured that says, oh, yes, Fletcher. Oh, yes, Fletcher. It was only 7 seconds long. I hope I did it justice.
You could bet your ass that this previous 7 seconds I'm going to isolate and save for later use. I promise.
Well, thanks. Yeah, enjoy your soundbite, motherfucker. Okay. Next up,
All right.
I believe this is the last one, fellas. We have from longtime listener Mark Schexnader.
Yeah, man. Loyal listener to all three shows.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Let me see here. I believe it's 2 emails. Okay, yeah. I'll read the November 2nd one first. Gentlemen, when Doug shared the Tampa article, that and the latest records denial sparked me to do some deep diving. I came across an online copy of George Michael Evica's We Are All Mortal. The chapter on Carcanos is the best breakdown on the rifle I've ever seen. Besides the incredible detailed gun and ballistics research, he links John Thomas Mason, who owns one of the 2 gun shops that supply Mannlicher Carcano ammo in Dallas, to the Minutemen and Cuban groups. Mason was even arrested days before selling guns and ammo to one of the watched Cuban groups. Apparently, Mason also reloaded some MC rounds with soft lead for hunters. If that second Mannlicher Carcano was behind the fence, these rounds match the Z-film head explosion and X-ray evidence Evica discusses. I am only throwing this out for discussion as I dig more. Have you guys heard any more on the Lauren Hall Mannlicher Carcano? Serial numbers, additional photos, expert report, etc., or has the CIA decided to confiscate it as well? Mr. Pappas better watch his ass. I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. Thanks for all you both do on Quick Hits and your other shows. Y'all are best in class. Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Rob, what should we say? Stay tuned.
Yeah.
About that.
Stay tuned. Yeah. We have more information, but we can't share it yet. So just stay tuned, folks.
And more to come. We're
working on it.
We're working on it. There you go, buddy.
He goes on to add this. Gentlemen, I found this old Tonto article that could possibly, with a big question mark, help clarify the Lauren Hall stepson's Mannlicher Carcano. And it says, when Doug shared the Tampa article, that and the latest... hang on a second. Let me hit this. It wasn't Tanto. He misspelled it. Tatro. Apparently, our old buddy Ed Tatro wrote something, and
we should. Hey, just from now on, we got to refer to him as Ed Tonto. From now on, he's Ed Tonto.
Ed Tonto.
Ed Tonto.
He's the Lone Ranger sidekick.
Rob's favorite researcher.
I can't get the article PDF to download, Mark, right now. Maybe we'll check it out.
Yeah, tell him to. We'll check it out.
Here it is. Okay, guys, I reread the Tantro paper. Boy, he really fucks this guy's name up. I reread the Tantro paper in my first email, and while interesting, really only one paragraph really pertains to the second Mannlicher Carcano. The email was a draft I hit the send button too soon on, so please ignore it for now. It also replowing ground that you guys, Mr. Larry, and others have covered. I have ordered a hardback copy of Evica's book so I can cross-reference it better. Evica repeats himself a lot, but the interconnections he made are rock solid, especially around the ballistics, weapons, and Pontchartrain camps. I'll circle back when I have something worthy of your consideration. Thanks for all both of you guys do, Mark. So, yeah, I'll work on downloading this Ed Tatro article, and maybe we'll talk about it on the next show. But until then, interesting to know, there's a lot of guys that have done deep dives on the Mannlicher Carcano. You got George Michael Evica, you got
Armstrong.
Yeah, John Armstrong. You've got David Josephs. You've got
Gary Murr.
Gil Jesus. Gary Murr. So, once we establish the serial number, it might be easy to track, when and where it came through into the country, because I believe a lot of these serial numbers were tracked for these rifles as far as where they went after they came inside the United States. Where they were distributed from, rebuilt, scrapped, whatever the case may be, or who sold them, who resold them. So all that information, we're working on it, and we have some of it. We just still need to go a little bit further with a little bit more before we can get back to you with any definitive answers either way. But as always, Mark, thank you for your support of the shows, and it's always good hearing from you. And that is it for the emails, folks. And if you would like your email or question or comment read here on the show, you can email us at quickhitsjfk@gmail.com.
Quickhitsjfk quickhitsjfk@gmail.com. Yes. Did I get that right, Rob? Yes. Yeah. Send us your questions. We want them. Nice things about Bart. Just write nice things about Bart and send them to us, and we'll just read them. We like those.
Call him a wanker. He'll enjoy that too.
Yeah, call him a wanker.
Yeah, do it.
Why should you be any different than everybody else, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Bart, dude, it's so awesome that you came and sat down with us for 3 whole damn hours to talk about this stuff, dude.
Mate, you know what? You guys are my favorite show from episode 1. I laughed, and the humor is important because all you get to deal with is dishonesty and lying and all kinds of rubbish operations, and God knows what it is all happening. Nothing true, and then you get a few laughs, and that's actually quite good fun to have, because there isn't enough of it, because it's such a miserable subject, let's face it. So
the stuffy academics and tweed jackets are important in this case. It is also important to keep a sense of humor about things and be entertaining and make it fun to listen to, but also informative and educational at the same time. It's a very fine line, one of which we cross.
I don't take myself seriously, but I take what I do very seriously. That's the way I look at it. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So,
us too, man.
But no, I had great fun. It was good fun to be here, and keep up the great work, because every episode is something else, and the other people that you get on the shows and so forth, and it's really informative. So it's time well spent. That's the way I look at it. So.
Well, Mark, go ahead and plug your website again and when the drop is coming.
Well, we got dealeyplazauk.com, which, of course, is our organization. We're about 50-odd people big. We do 2 yearly conferences. Of course, COVID has messed up with that, but I think next year I wouldn't be surprised if we organize 1, if not 2. I think our first conference is going to be this time part in the pub and part online. We've gained some American members who joined us, and Zoom has been a good thing for that, to basically, while we do the talks in the pub, the people across the states can follow what we're doing on Zoom as well. The only letdown is that you have to get up early, so on a Saturday. But other than that, it's been good. So, and then my own personal website is prayer-man.com, and the bits that I find in Malcolm's archive and that fall within my remit, of course, have been published there over the last couple of years anyway, and it's going to be over the next few years as well. So that's that.
Cool. Thanks again, Bart. We appreciate it, buddy.
Yes,
thank you.
All right, well, let's get out of here, Rob. Start us off, my friend.
All right. You know the deal, folks. The Lone Gunman Podcast. Wherever you listen to this, you can listen to that. Also, do me a damn favor. Go to YouTube. Find my channel. Google The Lone Gunman. Although you might end up on Bart's channel. You can subscribe to that sumbitch as well. But make sure you subscribe to mine, because I don't have 1,000 fucking followers yet. And it'd be nice to monetize the channel. So give me a fucking follow on YouTube. Please.
I will.
Doug.
And please follow his channel. And do not forget, guys, you can catch my show, The Dallas Action, presented by Wall Street Window, everywhere you find quality podcasts, ongoing, forward-moving, informed, deep historical study and analysis of the conspiracy to murder John F. Kennedy, like this podcast. Another fine podcast from Drop Podcast production. So, for Rob Clark and for Bart Camp, this is Doug Campbell saying tune in again next time when, upon witnessing the James Files himself randomly approach strangers on the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza and offer to take a selfie with them for $10 during November in Dallas 2019, we'll hear Rob say,
"Is that what I come down here for? Spend all this money? I gotta run into this fucking pain in the ass?"
we are out.
How the mighty are fallen.
That was creepy as hell.